Ever wonder if we're alone in the universe?
Do you find yourself staring into the night sky theorizing about the existence of aliens?
Alien Theorist Theorizing is a comedy podcast where your neighborhood armchair alien theorists theorize.
We're talking about space exploration, UFOs, extraterrestrials,
And cryptozoology, the supernatural, and conspiracy theories.
New episodes every Friday.
Listen for free anywhere you find podcasts.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult Vault. I'm your speaker Casey, and this week we have a new movement to look into with an activist that I have been following for quite some time now. Before we get started, I should inform you all that I have been offered some ad opportunities through my hosting site, so you may hear a few host-read ads popping up here and there on new episodes. But for now, I am excited to bring you all this week's guest, Dario. So hello, Dario, and welcome to the show. I am so excited that we finally get the chance to sit down and chat at length about your experiences, your creative journey, and the work that you have done around providing safe spaces for other survivors of this particular group and for others. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Dario. I just go by Dario. I don't really go by my full name.
What is the name of the group that we are going to be focusing on today?
So the name is Spanish because this is an organization that was founded in Mexico. I'm going to say it in Spanish, then I'll translate it. Is Iglesia del Dios Vivo, columna y apoyo de la verdad, la Luz del Mundo. So that's in English, Church of the Living God, pillar and ground of the truth, the light of the world. Or simply known as La Luz del Mundo in Spanish, LLDM. Or in English, the light of the world, TLOTW, which doesn't really roll out the tongue.
Wow.
People just call it LLDM.
LLDM. I think that might be the longest name for any faith I've heard, I think.
They have a couple of records.
Oh my goodness. That's such a long... So LLDM is what I will refer to the group as, I think.
It's LDM or LLDM.
This particular movement you mentioned then it was founded in Mexico.
It was founded in 1926 by a guy by the name of Eusebio Joaquin Gonzalez, who claims that in that year, 1926, God appeared to him, or a hand in the sky. Supposedly he was laying in his bed with his wife, and out of nowhere he saw that the ceiling removed, and there was a bunch of stars, and the stars started taking shape, and they became a finger, and the finger was pointing at him saying, your name will be Aaron. And I think that happened like once, twice, three times, something like that, until he finally understood that it was about him. And then supposedly God told him that he had to leave his home and go somewhere. The next Thursday, he told him, I want you to get up, and next Thursday, go somewhere. Kind of like Abraham. He thought of himself as Abraham of our time. But yeah, the important part there is 1926. 6th of April was the day that God spoke to him. Supposedly. Okay,
so is that still a significant date in the church to this day?
It's been for many years. I would say it still is, but they've diminished the importance of the dates of the previous apostles, because they've had 3 apostles so far, and the latest one kind of was more about himself. So he started really diminishing the importance of like several dates like that. But before that, for 50 years, I would say, during the time of the second apostle, they really did respect all these dates. So they had like 10 of these dates that were important. The time when he was called by God, and then the time where he had arrived to Guadalajara, because they walked, and we'll go over that later. But him and his wife walked all the way from Monterrey. If you look it up on a map, it's 494.2 miles. That's 795 kilometers that they walked in 8 months from Monterrey to Guadalajara, where I'm from. I was born and raised in Guadalajara.
Oh my goodness.
So that's another record, I would say, for how much an apostle has walked. I don't know. Well, a modern one, I would say. I didn't hear about Jim Jones walking around that much.
That is wild, especially when you consider that between the top and bottom of England is 556 miles. So they've almost walked the entirety of the country that I live in.
Wow. Yeah, that's
that is
in 8 months. So the dates that were celebrated were the 6th of April, 1926, the day that he was called, and then 12th of December, the day that he landed or reached Guadalajara. One important thing to understand is that 12th of December, Mexico is a Catholic country. And the 12th of December is the day that they celebrate something to do with the Virgin Mary. El Día de la Virgen Guadalupe, something like that. You can Google it so you can see exactly what it is. 12 de Diciembre, 12th of December in Mexico, the day of the Virgin of Guadalupe. So that's very significant because this cult, this organization is very, very against idolatry.
So would you say that they are not conforming with the rest of Mexico's celebrations?
No, definitely not. They were against, it was like David and Goliath,
So Gonzalez or Aaron really wants to set himself apart from Mexican traditions.
Definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
interesting. And I think I read in some of your notes that you sent back to me that he joined the army at an early age and had quite an interesting backstory before these visions came to him.
So first he was a teacher. This guy was born in Jalisco, I think Ocotlan or Colotlan, one of those two, I forget. But the point is that, he was a teacher, and then after being a teacher, I forget exactly what age he joined the Constitutional Army during the Mexican Revolution. And he moved he was sent, or I think he joined there in Monterrey. And while he was stationed there, that's when he came in contact with another church, which was a known church in Mexico and the United States, the Iglesia Cristiana Espiritual. He met the two pastors or two prophets, as they call themselves, Saulo and Silas. These guys are the ones that started talking to him about the Bible and different form of Christianism that was not Catholic. And all these movements were coming from the U.S. You have to think about, the history of the U.S. versus the history of Mexico, very, very different. Mexico was conquered by the Spanish. That's the reason that I speak Spanish. And that's the reason we were all Catholic. But in the U.S., it was not the Catholics that conquered. It was not the Spanish. So anyway, you started seeing the effect of, being neighbors.
Right, the divide between the two different belief systems.
So the ideas of the non-Catholic Christians started flowing into Mexico, and through people. I think Saulo and Silas were taught by somebody else from Texas or something like that, and then they ended up meeting people like Aaron, and they taught him about Christianism in a different angle, not the Catholic one.
Right, and he adopted that Christian belief system.
Right.
Okay, so do you have any idea how long it was before he went on this great walking voyage with his wife, between kind of joining the army, adopting these Christian values, and then making the big migration?
It was a short time. I don't have the exact date, but it could have been like from dropping out of the army to meeting Saulo and Silas, it could have been less than a year, I would say.
When he realized that something was encouraging him or telling him that he needed to adopt the name Aaron, it's interesting that that's quite an English name, I believe.
Well,
it's at least a name that's used quite commonly in English to name mostly men. So I don't know if I'm not that familiar, so I wouldn't know if it's used commonly in other parts of the world. So
you have to look at it from a different angle. That name is a biblical name, so that's older than, or not older, because but the name Aaron was used longer by the people that wrote the Bible and people that come from there, so the Jews, the Israelites, etc. So it's a name that was originally theirs. The name that you say, the word Aaron, in your language or my language, is just a translation of whatever it was, in their language. Right. So anyway, the point is that they didn't name him Aaron because of what it means in Spanish or English, but he didn't name himself that because it was a biblical name. And that's very significant because everyone in the cult is supposed, or the organization is supposed to be named biblically. Your name has to come from the Bible. If it's not, you're looked at like you're not that loyal.
Right. So are you talking about children that are born into the movement?
Yes.
They would be given biblical names at birth, or if
Yes.
people are converted, are they given a new name by leadership?
So the first point, yes, if you're born, you should name your kids by biblical names. Number two, he wouldn't really change the name. The ministers wouldn't really change your name unless you were special, unless like they really, really liked you and they saw a future. I know a couple of people, they had very Catholic names. Like if you were named after the Virgin Guadalupe, that was the name of one person, and his name got changed to Jose, or he changed it on his own because he was embarrassed of the connection that he had to the Catholic
Right.
religion. So that didn't happen as much, but it was a possibility.
Right. So you go by the name Dario, and
Yeah,
I'm not going to ask you to tell us what your birth name is, but I'm going to guess that it's a biblical name.
Dario is biblical. See,
it is? Okay.
Yes. So there's a couple of funny things there. See, my full name is Jose Dario. I don't go by my last name just because I think it's extra for everyone to just go by last names. I like keeping things simple. So it's me going by Dario has nothing to do with all this.
Right.
Mess.
Okay.
That is my name. I just my whole full name is Jose Dario and then my last name. But Jose, Joseph from the Bible, he was Hebrew. But Dario, he was a Persian king. So they weren't supposed to name me after him because that's the extra rule. It's not just supposed to be a biblical name, but it's supposed to be a Hebrew name,
right?
Or a name of blessing. And the thing with Dario is that he was a great guy and everything, but he wasn't Hebrew. He wasn't part of the people of God. So my parents naming me that, they weren't really following instructions. They named me after my grandfather.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense to me. I've never read any versions of the Bible, so sometimes I am completely ignorant to some things, which has just become apparent there. I have heard of more of the Abrahamic and Hebrew names like Joseph and Moses. I'm more familiar with names like Paul and John. But Dario is not a name that I've heard before. So what you've just told me there makes sense. And also the connection there to your grandfather as well.
According to what you said, LLDM would say all the names that you said, Moses, John, Paul, those are names of blessing. So you should, because those were the good guys in the Bible. But if there was a Jezebel or Herod or Judas, you wouldn't name your kid that. But there's levels, so Dario was I think he did help out the Hebrew people at some point. So that's why nobody complained about my name. But if your name would have been like Jezebel, like people would make fun of you. They would say, oh, you were named after, a prostitute.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And as Aaron is moving through his walking journey, is he proselytizing and gathering followers as he goes?
That's how it started. So from the day that he left Monterrey, it was the next Thursday after the 6th of April. I don't know exactly what day that was, but the next Thursday, he left, and every town that he would reach, he would start preaching. He started acting as a biblical prophet, preaching and supposedly doing miracles. Supposedly, like in that whole trip, he healed.
Wow.
He brought people back from the dead, supposedly healed the sick, anything that you can imagine, all the biblical miracles, this guy performed on that 8-month trip.
So he's walking 494 miles, and the entire time he is performing faith healing, he's preaching and proselytizing, gathering followers until he reaches his final destination for that time, for 1926, did you say?
1926, yes.
Right.
Basically, he spent most of the year walking.
And that's how the movement starts. So how does it build then, following those first events?
This is very important to me because after I left the LLDM, I started doing research on so many cults, and I'm sure you have to. So something that's interesting about this one is that all these other cults, whether you want to talk about I don't know, the Jim Jones or the David Koresh or whatever, a lot of these guys, if not most of them, didn't last that long. That thing, something important to look at when you look at Aaron and LLDM is the legacy that they left. It's 100 years, almost 100 years. 4 years from now, it's going to be 100 years that this church has, done whatever their goal is. But that's a long time, 100 years. So your question is like, what has is very big. Like, what can we talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, was there a significant shift in the next 10 to 20 years where there were buildings established, where a real foundation was laid down for community members? Did Aaron ever decide on a place to stay?
Yes. So that's a good place to start. So he purchased land what is known now as Hermosa Provincia, and you can Google it if the listeners look it up. Hermosa Provincia, Guadalajara. You're going to see the biggest temple or the biggest church, whatever you want to call it. People call it different things in Latin America. So that's another record that they have. Wow.
So they actually have these different locations and places that you can go and visit.
Yes. But this one, the thing about that one is that temple wasn't built until way later, like in the 80s. It was finished in the 90s. They worked on it for a couple of years. But the point is that land where they ended up building that church that you can find if you Google it, that is the land, that he acquired from the government, and it became the compound. It's called Hermosa Provincia. And I call it the compound because his goal was to put walls around it.
Oh, right.
He wanted separate from the rest of society in Guadalajara. But he was not allowed by the government. But anyway, if you go there right now, you would see most of the people in that community, in that neighborhood, are LLDM members. And Hermosa Provincia is the first one, but then there's also another one a couple miles away, Hermosa Betel, La Colonia Betel, that's another one. Colonia Aaron Joaquin, that's another one. La 12 de Octubre, etc. But I think the first one was actually not Hermosa Provincia. I'm wrong. It was La 12 de Octubre, which is pretty close. But that's a very small temple. I think that's probably the first one. And you can also find that one online if you Google 12 de Octubre, La Luz del Mundo. I might miss a lot of important points, but the point there is that in Guadalajara, he started building. He had different neighborhoods where the main, requirement to be a part of this neighborhood was to be a member. He was only selling the lots to his believers.
Right. And do you have any idea of the time frame or the years in which this original compound was built?
Neighborhoods, compound neighborhoods. I would say 10, 20 years, he already had a couple around there. And then he started expanding in the next 34 years into other states and other countries. And then by the time that this guy died, he died in 1964. This guy was already in a couple of countries. There was already there was all over Mexico at that point. They were in El Salvador and they were in the United States. So I think those three. And then Samuel worked for 50 years from 1964 until 2014, and now they're in over 50 countries.
Wow!
Mainly the U.S. and Mexico, I would say.
So Hermosa Provincia was almost like a blueprint to expand the religion further and further, using that same sort of template to go further and further afield.
Yes, and their end game was to actually build cities, and they wanted to call them the light of the world cities. Actually, Nathan, the guy who is the grandkid of Aaron, of Eusebio, he's the one that's in prison, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But his goal when he took over was that we're going to build cities. He was going to build one in Atlanta, where I grew up. I actually grew up in Atlanta. In 2001, I moved to Atlanta, so I was there from 10 to 18 years old. He wanted to build a city there, La Luz del Mundo city. And then in Salvador, he was going to build another La Luz del Mundo city. And then, and I'm sure he wanted to do that in several other places, but you can actually find documentation as to him promising that God had given him visions that they were going to have cities for just members.
Wow.
So the dream of his grandfather, it didn't work out for him to just have like, walls around the community, but he did make the communities and he did grow the church. And then Samuel, the son of Aaron, also grew the church. But Nathan was trying to build cities.
Right. So Aaron, the original founder and leader of LDM, passes away in 1964, and automatically his son Samuel steps up to take over the leadership role of the LDM church.
So automatically, I don't think so. I think there was a bit of a power struggle, but he ended up being the one. He was young. He was 20 something, I would say. I don't remember the exact age, but he was in his 20s when he took over.
Right.
27 actually, he was.
He must have been an ambitious leader, because you said that after his 50-year tenure as leadership, the church was across 50 states.
Yeah, across 50 countries.
50 countries, sorry. Wow, that's
at that point, it was all over Mexico. I would say they claim 5 million members. They've been claiming 5 million members for a while in the world. My numbers are more along 200,000-300,000. If I want to be generous, I would say 500,000, 500. But they cheat when they do censuses, and when the Mexican government or the governments do a census, they claim that it's a lie. They claim that they're being played.
And after the 50 years of Samuel is up and he passes away, it's then his son that becomes leader of the LDM church.
Yes, his name is Spanish. So let me say everyone's name so everyone is aware. So Aaron, his full name was Eusebio Joaquin Gonzalez. His son, Samuel Joaquin Flores. And his son, Nason Merari Joaquin. Those are the three apostles of LLDM.
And the son it is the most recent leader. So even though he's not currently free to lead the faith in the way that most leaders should lead their faith, even though I know that Keith Raniere is still sitting in a prison cell making demands of the people that still follow him from Nexium. So nobody has stepped up since this guy's gone to prison.
By accept, do you mean that do his members accept the reason that he went to prison?
No, I mean now that he's not free, or free in the sense of the legal system to actively lead the church, are the LDM followers calling for a new leader, or are they still very much invested in this guy?
Very invested. They're
right.
Still invested.
And why is he in prison?
He's in prison. So I have a little information about that. He was arrested June 3rd, 2019 by LA County. He was arrested and charged by sexual abuse charges involving minors. 2 other women were arrested with him, Susana Medina Oaxaca and Alondra Ocampo. Joaquin was held on a $50 million bail, which was the highest up until that point in California history. And that was later raised to 90 million, actually. There was another woman that the California government is looking for, and her name is Azalia Rangel Melendez. The reason they were arrested is because these 3 women were from a young age. They were brainwashed is a very hard, heavy word, so I like saying indoctrinated instead of programmed. They were programmed from a young age at another level, and they were first victims. They were first victims, and then came a day where like these victims, they're told to invite other victims, to this sexual situations that they ended up in, sadly. And so the government arrested them because they were not just part of that group that was abused others, but they were also his secretaries. So
right,
that's why he was arrested. And I think the charges were 30 something charges that he has.
Oh my goodness.
36 felony offenses.
36.
Yeah.
And if the followers of the LDM faith are not calling for a new leader, does that mean that they are not believing the charges being brought against Joaquin?
The average member has no idea any of this happened. They believe it's all a lie. They believe just like Jesus Christ, was accused of whatever he was accused and prosecuted and killed by people. They think this is what's going on. They think he's a martyr. They think he's suffering for Jesus Christ and for God and religion, faith, etc. The same old. But there's people that are closer, to Nathan that sort of have to start having doubts at this point, because they have to have seen all these girls walking in and out of that house. And that's the thing that I tell a lot of people. The people that were actually close, I asked them, did you not see these women, like you don't see anything wrong with somebody that's rich and powerful having 50 young girls working for him, cleaning his house? Couldn't he have hired a cleaning service? And I'm like, that would have been more decent. That would have been, if he was a good man, he would have protected, his image and the image of the church by hiring people to take care of his business, right? But instead, he chose to have 50 women do this for him. And then I asked, didn't you see them walking out of the house showered? They would take a shower in that house and then leave. I'm like, who goes to the president's house and take a shower? Nobody. You don't do that. That's the president's house. I can't go there and hang out, shower, and then come back out. So there's signs that the people that were higher up had to have seen, but that's a close circle. Most of the members have no idea any of this went on. They don't even know what Nathan's family looks like, So there's definitely hierarchy. It was a monarchy. The average member wouldn't have any idea.
Are there any strong voices coming forward to provide this rhetoric for the followers that Joaquin is suffering for our sins? Because sometimes there needs to be other influences and other strong voices if the headship of the movement isn't able to maintain those strong connections by attending face-to-face sermons or big mass get-togethers. So there are people involved in
a system in place. So he has, first of all, he has brothers. Nason has a couple of brothers that are ministers, that are pastors, and they're also preaching that he's saved, that he didn't do anything wrong, that he's they say innocent. Like they have propaganda that says #innocent. And they even put a hashtag with innocent outside of the temple in Hermosa Provincia. And you can Google it, you can find it online probably. And they probably took it down already, I don't know. But his family is fighting for his innocence. The Consejo de Obispos, or the group of bishops, it's a couple of them. I think last time I checked, it was like a dozen of them. They're the highest in that hierarchy. They're fighting for him too. And then they got prophets and pastors and deacons and ministers, and just at the very bottom of that hierarchy, you have they call them obreros, or just the workers. And those are the people that are really suffering, to preach the gospel or whatever it is that they preach. And all of these people are in their levels doing that work to keep the church focused on Nathan. And we haven't spoken about what LLDM does. They meet every day. They meet 3 times per day, sometimes 4.
Wow.
So it's constant. It's constant. If somebody constantly telling you he's innocent, don't look at the news, don't look at the internet. That's nobody there is really doing the work of helping them question.
Right. So
the ones that left, we're the ones doing that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that there is a lot of instructing that goes on within the church around steering people away from listening to the work that you're doing with other advocates against LDM. So the structure on the inside of the faith-based movement resembles a typical Christian church with the with various different levels and hierarchies within the movement?
Yes.
And would you say that it is in line with traditional Christian movements in the sense that it's mostly men that find themselves leading congregations and sermons?
Definitely. They did make a little exception where this Aaron, Samuel, and Nathan would give recognition to some women that would call them, I don't know what the word is exactly in English. I think it's like deacons, but the female word for it. A deaconess. So they did anoint a couple of deaconesses.
Right.
How would you say, Carol? One of them being their own wife. So they credited their wife. But then a couple of women that they are also named after that title are women that were part of this whole grooming situation. So those women were giving a title or recognition that in other churches you really can't get. So on one hand, it's like, wow, they're recognizing some of them, but what are they recognizing them for? And when you realize that these are the women that were inviting young girls to go serve to the house, that's not really a blessing, it's a curse, you know. But they also asking about preaching, about women preaching. They did allow women to have one prayer, the 9 a.m. prayer they call it. That's where a woman gets up and she preaches, even if there's men. So that was a little bit revolutionary, I would say, for traditional Christian churches, because they don't really allow women to speak in front of men.
Yeah, it does sound more progressive than some of the high demand religious groups that we speak about on the show. I know that some of the faith-based movements we've discussed do allow women to come forward to speak, but a lot of the time are asked or expected to wear a certain headdress or something symbolic that will still kind of keep them a level of submissive or subservient or lesser than in or however you want to word it. But there's a kind of theme around keeping the family, the Joaquin family, in very high positions within the movement, whether that kind of means that brothers and sisters are being priests and deaconesses, and so I'm seeing a theme kind of starting to take place.
The progressive things that they do are very superficial. To me, they don't really matter, you know, because if you have a woman preaching, but they have to cover their head. All the women in church had to cover their head, like I said, with a veil. They were just doing it, I think, to appease people, you know, to make them feel like they were doing something better. But at the end of the day, the women that were the deaconesses or whatever, they were used for horrible things. So like I said, it's like, is that really progressive? No, not at all. So the whole image of being progressive, every time I saw in LLDM something progressive, it was just a front.
Especially when you consider that the leader of the LDM movement is in prison. I always find it interesting when I read the headline, sex with a minor or sexual intercourse with a minor. And I'm like, well, technically, I don't know. I mean, maybe the media just doesn't want to use the word rape, but if the child is not old enough or at the age of legal consent, then I think that is the word that is widely used. So it's not even a word I feel comfortable saying a lot of the time, but it does seem to make sense what you said about the progressiveness being almost superficial, because you've got leadership and people in positions of power taking extreme advantage of vulnerable members of the community that they oversee. So of course, if it was progressive in equality in the way that they might like us to think, then women wouldn't be put in those positions. And the workers that you said are the ones that are really struggling also themselves wouldn't be put in those positions of difficulty either.
And just an example I want to insert here. I know we had it down the line on the list, but I think it fits perfectly here. You asked something about how they treat or how they view the LGBT community. If you look up interviews that they've done recently, it's just propaganda. They said that they accept that they're, that they have nothing against the gay community, blah, blah, blah. That's what they keep saying to the outside. That's a front. But if behind closed doors, that they don't accept that at all. Like, you're going to hell. God's going to punish you. The same old from all these, other groups that you've heard about. The same thing. Everyone's situation is different. Depending on the ministry that you have, you might be better about it or worse, depending on your family. There's a lot of factors. But overall, it's not, all the people that I've met, I have a lot of friends that were gay and closeted in LLDM. Their experience was horrible. I think one of the groups that I related to the most right after leaving LLDM was the gay community, because I feel like I came out of the closet, like to be myself. And every time I met somebody, I was like, man, like, I understand you. But the point is that the front that LLDM puts up, they claim to be, progressive, and that they accept, the rights, but it's just the front. Like, behind closed doors, they don't really respect anybody. It's not about whether you're gay or a woman or a man or a child or an adult. Everything is centered around the leader. And if you don't do what he says, if you don't believe in him, you don't accept him, you're not a good person.
Right. So it's almost what you said towards the start of the episode, where the movement over the years has become more focused on leadership and become more of a cult of personality almost than a faith-based movement, where the rhetoric focuses on Jesus or God or whichever chosen deity the faith-based movement has chosen to worship.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also their worship, their principles work hand in hand with this, because they don't have any images, they don't have any saints, any crosses, any of that. The only thing that they have in their temples are the names of the apostles.
Oh no, I thought you were going to say pictures of them, like in the Unification Church with Sun Myung Moon.
So check this out. In the temples, they only have the names and their initials all over the place, all over, like, the place that where you might have the cross is removed and they have Mason's initials.
Right.
So that is idolatry, and then at home, they have the pictures where nobody can see.
Are you supposed to, with the Unification Church, families would get up in the early hours of the morning and sort of bow to those photos, and they would hold a morning ritual or morning ceremony around those pictures of Mr. and Mrs. Moon? So I don't know if that's something that you had as well. No, okay.
No, they luckily they wouldn't. That would be the next step.
No, it's interesting to draw the parallels though between the different high demand religions.
I draw them too, and I found them very interesting. But I also find interesting that they did a lot of things and they stopped. Like, they were almost about to do that, and they're like, no, let's not do that. Let's mask this a little bit. But it's the same thing. Like, you're removing the cross to put the initials. You're putting the picture everywhere. What is the purpose of having his picture everywhere? And it's the same purpose, so that you can worship him in your heart, so that you can have him in your mind 24/7. You don't need to sit there and pray.
But also,
when it's here in your heart and mind.
It's in your heart and your mind, but it's also a constant reminder. So in your own home, it's almost like you're always being watched by the leadership. So if you're going to be taking part in anything that the church might disagree with, they want to remind
you that he's there.
It's like they're always watching over your shoulder. So it's that really intense control.
Exactly. That's the way that I view it.
And what's difficult about what you said about the LGBT community is that if somebody is in a transitional period or in a low or difficult period in their life, and they're approached by somebody who is looking to recruit or convert, and they are told that the movement is extremely accepting of people that identify with the LGBT community. If somebody is to kind of take that leap of faith and join an LDM service, and then hear some of the rhetoric that you've spoken about, with that anybody that identifies with the LGBT community is going to hell, or that they are inherently sinful, that would be so devastating for somebody to experience. So it's even more predatory that they position themselves in that way if that's not actually the values that they hold.
All of their doctrines are sugar-coated, all of them. That's what it is. Yes.
We've spoken a lot about how the faith has changed over the years. And it's my understanding that your family are quite close to leadership. So do you have any idea of when your family first joined the LDM movement?
So I don't have the exact date, but it was very early on. It was during the time of Eusebio / Aaron. My great grandfather, his name was Ramon Rodriguez. Him and his father joined. And Ramon Rodriguez was actually a pastor of Aaron or / Eusebio. So he was a pastor. He was a member of the people that led the church. And his son, Untitled Rodriguez, my great grandfather, he was the first choir director of this movement. I actually sent you a recording. I think it would be interesting if you insert it here so that people can hear. Just how it sounds and like the the emotional effect that type of music has on people, especially because there was no instruments used in this cult. It's all vocal and it's all about worshiping with your feelings and spirit. So very trance-like. And then Ángel Rodriguez, his daughter, Rebecca Rodriguez, that's my grandmother. She was married to Dario, my grandfather. My mom comes from that family tree. Her name is Susan, and she's married to Nathan's best friend. So it's just like I have a tie here, another tie here.
Wow.
Like Ramon was very close to Aaron. Aaron was close to Aaron and Samuel. Dario was very close to Samuel. And then my dad, Pepe, that's what they call him, his nickname, Jose, he was very close to Nathan. So I was tied to that family in different parts of the family tree.
Absolutely. And considering what we've already discussed about how the leadership likes to ensure that other leadership roles are given to family members, does that apply to close family friends as well, would you say?
It was best, to keep leadership roles in the family, but they just went for whoever would do what they said. If their own brother was not doing what the leader said he was supposed to be doing, he wouldn't get a position.
Right. Okay. So
they were a little. It's not really fair, but more there was what was convenient to them.
At the time that you are born, your family has been involved with and well established in the LDM church by the time that you arrive.
Yeah, and there's many families like that. Mine is just one of many families. We're not the most relevant. Nobody really was. The most relevant was with the Joaquin family. Everyone else was just a sidekick there. But there's several families that were like that.
One of the pictures that you sent me of you early on, you were like with, is it tigers?
Yeah, they're tigers, yeah. There were Samuel's tigers from his ranch.
So
he had a whole zoo.
That is, I mean, living over here in England, where I've only ever seen animals like that in zoos, and sort of there's a lot of conservation work that they do over here in Liverpool. So I've only ever seen big cats in that environment, and after watching the documentary Tiger King, I understand that a lot of people in positions of power in society, or with money, or in politics, whichever power position people find themselves in, they use big cats as a symbol to show that power to other people. So is that why he kept these tigers?
So there's two conversations there. It's interesting that you made that assumption, but their thing was not, they weren't just about the tigers. Their family crest, they actually have a family crest, are wolves. So it's that's interesting. Let's talk about that. I find that more interesting than the zoo. We can talk about that in a second. A Christian leader who's supposed to represent Jesus Christ, who is not represented by wolves. This family, the Joaquines, their family crest are wolves, and they loved wolves. Their trucks had like vinyl paint jobs or whatever, none of them with wolves. The ranch was called Silver Wolf Ranch. You can look it up. There's one here. That's the one in Texas. There were, and in the back of where I grew up in Nathan's house. I know there's a lot of information that I'm giving out, but it's all about wolves. They had wolves in the backyard. So, and every night when I was a kid, I would hear the wolves just.
Wow. Were you ever kind of like, because you're just petting this tiger and you're a baby yourself, so there's like this tiger cub and this human cub, and you're kind of just rolling around with this tiger. That is like, I don't remember
that. I don't remember that picture. I was like one or something. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
But I do remember later. Now let's talk about the zoo. They had lions, they had tigers, crocodiles, hippos, ostrich, all of those animals, eagles.
And you could and they were just free range, or were they
in cages, exactly like a zoo. And it was pretty much like Tiger King, but minus the drama. It was just a place for him to go relax, for Samuel and Nathan and his family to hang out and look at the animals. And I got to go there quite often because of my dad. So
something else you said in that last segment was that you lived in Nathan's house.
Mm-hmm. From the day I was born until I would say I was 10 years old, I lived in Nathan's house. And so you gotta, when you look at it from a Google Maps view, you'll see like the temple at the very center. It's like a square, and then in the center you have the temple, and then you have like Aaron's house, Samuel's house, huge buildings, and then you have like on one of the outer streets you have 7 houses. Those 7 houses were for each of Samuel's sons, and there were 3 buildings. There were buildings with 3 floors each, 3 or 4. And then I lived in the bottom floor of Nathan's house. All my memories are there from my childhood.
Wow. Were your mum and dad kind of encouraged to pair off together because of their ties to the inner family, or did they just meet because of their?
Yeah, there's different cases. My parents just liked each other, and they decided to get married because of that. But there was other people that were paired. I was not one of those families.
Was it just you, or were there brothers and sisters?
I have brothers and sisters.
And do they remember rolling around with tigers or seeing wolves?
Yeah. They're not, maybe not exactly the tigers part. Like we all have our own experiences, but I'm sure they went through other things that I'm not aware of. But the wolves, the wolves were back there for everyone to hear and see. They went to the zoo, to the ranches. Like, they know that they ate with Samuel, they met Nathan. We share most of our experiences. It's just a case by case.
Do you think that, or from what can you remember from the experiences that you had from age sort of, I don't know, do we start to remember things at 4, 5? I think it's different for everyone.
6
but
for me.
From 0 to 10, do you think your life was different in this situation than it was 10 onwards when you moved to Atlanta?
Yeah, totally different. When we moved to Atlanta, my world changed.
So talk us through your life 0 to 10 from what you can remember in terms of your relationship to LDM, your family life, and what does that whole thing look like?
So 0 to 10. Going to church a lot, to the kids' studies. That's what they call them, and we would just chant the same thing over and over again. They were trying to get us to repeat what they called studies. It was just like a bunch of Bible verses stuck together and an explanation to what each thing meant, and we would do that for like an hour. So we did that a lot, like almost every day. Going to school, pretty calm. Walking to visit my grandfather, who was still alive at that point, Anthony Rodriguez, the choir director. We're all very proud of him, because of his influence in the church and how much Samuel liked them. So he was very important to all of us. He was a very good guy, friendly guy. My memories of the house were just playing video games, going to the backyard where I told you that they had the wolves, but the wolves were caged. So I had a little pool back there. I would like a kiddie pool, the cheap ones that you get, from Walmart. So I would swim back there. I like bugs. I had a little encyclopedia, and I would try to match, the ladybug with the ladybug.
I love that.
And when the Nate Samuel's grandkids would see me doing that, sometimes they would make fun of me. They were like, "Oh, you nerd." But then Pokemon came around, so then they were like, "Oh, this is pretty cool."
Yeah.
That's what Pokemon is based on. The guy that created Pokemon also did what I did as a kid. So anyway, I grew up with those kids, with all of Samuel's kids. So I like to tell people when they start, a lot of people are very angry, at what that family did to them, and I like them to think bigger. It's not just about the Hawking family. It's not just about us. It's an environment. We allowed it. They allowed it. If one of us was to step away, this wouldn't be an environment anymore. But we chose to stay, and they chose to stay. And I compare them to I don't know your political stance, but I mean, imagine a prince. You're told from the moment you're born, you're a prince. You're a prince. You're a prince. That's all you know. That is brainwashing. That is indoctrinating. That is programming. In the world, not just in cults. There's a lot of programming in the world. Mm-hmm. And I like to tell people, think about that family. Think about those kids. I grew up with them. They were not bad kids.
Yeah.
I feel like they were doomed. A lot of them, they were just doomed from the moment because they were born into that family. Yeah. So now they're stuck to all these negative things, that come with being part of that family. And that applies to Nathan. That applies to Samuel. I don't think it applies to Aaron so much because he started this as an adult. So we're all kind of wondering what happened to him. That's a mystery there. Why did he do what he did? And a lot of people like to think that that he was a politician type of person. So he took advantage of his connections. Yeah, he met somebody that somebody was telling me yesterday that was actually the future governor of his state before he became the governor of the state of Jalisco. Jalisco is a huge state. So he had a lot of treaties, with political individuals back in his day. But anyway, my point is regarding me growing up there is growing up with the grandkids was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because those were my friends.
It's very tough what you've just said there, and I think it's an excellent point to raise, and something I'm sure you've had very lengthy discussions around in terms of the prince analogy. And I did kind of think of that when I saw the pictures of the baby tiger. There needs to be some level of accountability at some point, which is what I think Nassan is experiencing now from his jail cell for things that he did, not just related to church activities, but perhaps what he was able to get away with for so long because of his position in such a faith-based movement.
Right.
But what you've said there is right, and it's difficult because when you are a child, your role model is your primary caregiver, and if your primary caregiver is the figurehead of such a huge movement, then you learn what you see. So if these children and grandchildren are growing up with this kind of behavior being modeled for them, then of course they follow suit.
And not just like, if you talk about that, Samuel was not raising these kids 24/7. He was not. It was the nannies. It was the uncles. It was the ministers. It was the friends. It's like this whole organization was treating these kids like they were gold, or like they were better than us. I'm not talking about accountability. I'm not saying you're not. I agree with you about accountability, but that's a different conversation to me. I'm talking about, because accountability, everyone's on that. Everyone's like, the government takes care of that. There's already systems for that. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm not saying we couldn't get better, but we've already tried to handle that situation. But my question to people is, who is trying to handle those environments before we get to the problem? Before we get to people abusing and thinking they're better than us, kings, queens, politicians, cult leaders, who is helping create better environments? I don't see that being handled, in the world in general.
Absolutely. Especially with what you said about Aaron being an adult who had lived in the world and had seen the society's expectations of what a positively functioning person or a positively contributing person to society might look like. And so has harnessed an environment where that is not happening. And you said that you'd like to know, or it would be interesting to have a discussion around how that happened. But he was a teacher before anything else, and perhaps he liked to command the room and to kind of be the captain of the ship, perhaps.
The thing I would like to point out is that you're talking about like in and out, like him before the movement and him after the movement, right? And you're like, you have these two boxes. But what I'm trying to say here is that it's bigger than that. We're all in a box. Like, and there's different boxes. I'm not saying there isn't. You're right. But once you get out of that box, like Aaron was in a box already before joining this other one that he created. And like, for example, your country, you guys have a monarchy. And it's like nobody. I mean, I come from a different world, so maybe I don't see it the way that you see it. But I don't just question your country. I question mine. I question the whole world. That's the kind of person that I've always been. Especially, I feel like that's been, maximized because of my experience. So I'm not just. I feel like I got out of that box, the LLDM box, and I'm looking at the world and I'm like, why are you guys still giving one person all this power? Whether it's a president, whether it's the monarch, or whether it doesn't matter. It's like I feel like we're setting them up for failure. Just having one guy or one family, or and it's interesting to me that more people are not having this conversation. We have so many geniuses in the world. Like, I'm not saying let's make them leaders, but we could come up with better systems so that we don't have to put that pressure on anybody. But there are people that are holding the power, whether it's the Joaquines or it's the president of Mexico, the president of the US, or the politicians here, or that they don't want that to happen. So they cripple us through the education system, and in a way we're all still being indoctrinated through the history, through the lessons. But that's a story for another day. But I just
no, I think that's great. and what you said there about kind of questioning everything and looking at things in that way is such a great quality to have. And I have always asked, why do we have a queen? I don't understand why we have a queen, and what does the queen actually do? I think is a question I probably asked a lot when I was growing up. And what I find really strange is when people have, like, especially like people over in America, have like glass cabinets full of plates with her face on, and like Jubilee celebrations. It's really, really bizarre for me. And then the TV show The Crown came out, and I was thinking I probably wouldn't watch it because I'm not really that interested in the monarchy. I couldn't name you 10 members from history throughout the British royal family. If that came up on a quiz, I'd probably really struggle to get to 10. It's just never really been something that I have taken an interest in. But I watched a few episodes of The Crown, and what you said there about the pressure, she is born and Queen Elizabeth, when her father dies, she's then like, well, you're the queen.
I feel like we're screwing people up from the beginning,
Yeah, it's tough.
And they don't see it. because they're like, I have to do this. I have to, whether it's negative or positive. An individual might have different reasons to accept that responsibility, but it's not normal. I think that's something that I'm very invested in, like the environments. Like I feel like we're all at fault in all these different boxes for allowing those environments to exist, and for not talking about this and trying to change things. And we think because monarchies or democracies or whatever have been going on for hundreds of years, we have to continue it. You don't. Like I said, we have enough smart people in the world that we could come up with better systems that wouldn't be so damaging to people's minds, that wouldn't give so much pressure. You don't have to have one person, make the decision of who's going to press the button for the nuclear war or not. Like, no one should have that. Unless, again.
that is a very prevalent thing to say, because as we have this conversation, Russia has just invaded Ukraine and they are threatening to go over into Sweden. So there's that whole even like crazy thing that's going on in the world right now, which is really scary. But even what you said there around politicians having power, why should one person have so much power? And then people ask questions of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and ask why the richest people in the world aren't paying more of their money into trying to fix things in the world. And so should three people have that much wealth? It's just these conversations we could have all day, but I really do like the stance that you've had and the way that you question things. And I think that speaks for itself in why you are such a prevalent figure in advocating for other survivors of these high demand religious groups, and why your voice is so effective in that space. But your kind of age 0 to 10 is kind of just a happy, fun-filled childhood. You're just living life. You've got plenty of leisure time.
I had a good childhood, even though I did have to go to all those indoctrination.
Yes, of course.
I still have a good life. And then after that, the shocking part was being pulled away from all that. Going to Atlanta from 10 through 18. That was really hard, because I went from being close to all the people that were special in our community to being isolated, like being put in a school where nobody knew how special, where I came from was, that woke me up. I feel like that really helped me, because I was given a chance to try a whole different environment.
Before we talk about the severity of the commitments that you had growing up, let's discuss some of the basic principles and practices of the LDM Church so that we can better understand the movement itself and how it sets itself aside from other Christian-based movements.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I have is, like I mentioned, first of all, the spiritual worship. So only to God, no images, no saints, no crosses, any of that. In the church, they were arranged by men on one side, women on the other side. You really weren't supposed to speak out that much during meetings. Just say amen, just glorify. No musical instruments, daily meetings, 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and then they added 8 a.m. recently. Sunday meetings, that was Monday through Saturday. Sunday was 5 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 hours, and then 5 p.m., 2 hours. So every day you were at least in church 4 or 5 hours. The beliefs, the main one is, if you want to reach God, you need to reach Christ. But if you want to reach Christ, you need to believe in the apostle. And then they throw you a bunch of Bible verses, to convince you of that. But that's called the doctrine of the election. The election. You believe in the apostle, you're saved. If you don't believe in the apostle, it's like you don't even know God or Jesus. You have to repent. So to be saved, you need to believe in the election, number one. Number two, you need to repent of your sins. Number three, be baptized in water and fire. So the water, that's the common one, where they dunk you. And then the third one, and the other one, the baptism in fire, is receiving the Holy Spirit, which is speaking, according to them, it's a combination of speaking in tongues.
Oh gosh, okay.
And receiving a spiritual being or seal, that says, "You are my son." And then work for the church. So they cover all their bases. Work for the church means giving money, helping out with sales. For example, for the celebrate Mother's Day, they celebrate Mother's Day in America. I'm sure you do too. They sell roses, so they have the whole church pitch in to buy a bunch of boxes of roses, and then they prepare them and then sell them. But this product is purchased with the money of the members. The church is not giving one penny, even though they already have money. They could invest their money and then the profit could be theirs. No, but everything comes from the members. The church does not pitch in.
So the congregants and members of the church, their money is used to buy these boxes of flowers, which are then presented and sold to the wider community by members of the church, and the money goes back into the church.
Yeah. So you
again, that's
money,
another huge parallel to the Unification Church, isn't it?
And the profit.
And do you have any idea how many hours people might spend selling flowers on the street?
All day. You could wake up at 5 a.m., go to church, get out of church, and then sell until the afternoon prayer.
Wow.
And they'll give you permission not to attend church that day if you're going to focus on selling flowers.
Oh my goodness, that's so intense. That really is.
And that's just one thing. Like, I could name hundreds of things. Like they construct that temple that you will find on Google, the Hermosa Provincia temple, was made 100% by church members.
Wow.
People that didn't know anything about construction, that a lot of them didn't go to school back then, and they built this great thing. So I would say impressive side of this.
Huge accomplishment, absolutely.
By the people.
And what you said previously about the children being treated like royalty and having a significant status within the church, that felt a lot like what I'd read in Lisa Cohn's book, To the Moon and Back, Childhood Under the Influence, when she wrote about growing up with the grandchildren of Sun Myung Moon and how the children were seen as royalty and treated very differently, and could throw stones at security, and security would be like, "Oh, you're so sweet," even though they were being quite rebellious and difficult.
Yes.
And so that was a parallel, and selling flowers on the street is definitely something that I associate with the Unification Church. So again, another similarity there. It's so interesting to draw these parallels, but to think about people going to church service and then spending their entire day on the street using their own money to buy flowers, and then all of the money that they make going straight back into the church. Wow, that's exhausting.
Let's talk about a bigger scheme, because that's just a small one. The whole community that I told you that they purchased, Hermosa Provincia, whose money did they use to buy that? The members.
Of course.
And then listen to this one. This is crazy. It's a flower is okay, like I can get a day of my life back, I can, it's not a big deal. I mean, actually you can't get a day of your life back, but you get my point. It's not a big deal. But a whole piece of land that was purchased with your money, and then they turn around and sell you a piece of it.
So you're paying for it twice.
And then in the LLDM cities, same thing. Mason went and bought this huge lots in Atlanta. You can look up how many acres it was. Probably find that information online. He was trying to sell that to the members, a piece of land, so that you could have your own home there in a place where they're going to have a hospital, a school. That was LLDM. That's the biggest scam that they were trying to pull off. One of the biggest scams, I would say. That
is pretty wild when you think that it's like paying for the same house twice.
Exactly. And they built a hospital called Hospital Siloé. You would think that you would get a discount for being a member. Nope, super expensive. And it was built with our money. And when Samuel passed, he actually left it to one of his sons. So it's not, they're not, all these institutions, they have schools, they have hospitals, universities, they're owned by the family. They're not owned by the church, even though the church paid for them.
So they're not seen as community places or places of community.
They claim so to get the money out of your pocket. But once it's in their pockets, it's under their name.
When I spoke to Teddy Hose from the Unification Church, ex-second generation Mooney, he said that it's labor trafficking. And we did a huge awareness piece around human trafficking in January. And Teddy wrote a short piece for me where he spoke about his experiences with labor trafficking and how people believe that it's something that they really, really want to do for the church because they are told that it will make them.
Like I said, it's one of the pieces for salvation. If you don't work, you could have done the other 4 pieces that I said: the baptism, the Holy Spirit. That's together. The repenting, the believing in the election. It's 4. It's 5. It's 5 because I separated baptism and 5. But if you don't work, you could have received the Holy Spirit, repented and believed, and you're still not gonna get into heaven.
That's exactly what I was trying to summarize. You've just summed it up so perfectly there. People go to church and then they go out to labor trafficking, where they will, go through all of these difficulties to make sure that they make enough money for the church. What do church commitments look like? Aside from the labor trafficking, what are the daily and weekly commitments for an average member? And was that different for you being sort of in the inner circle?
It wasn't much different for me. It's case by case. But let's talk about like the broad picture of what those things look like, and then I'll tell you about my experience. So for everyone, you have to clean the temple.
Wow. Okay.
So they have groups of people that are assigned per day, and one day it could be the kids, one day it could be the women, 40 to 50, or etc.
The kids clean in the temple.
Everyone cleans.
Okay.
Everyone, and then they have special groups of people that clean the pastor's house. So that's not everybody. That's only you're trustworthy. And they have even more trustworthy groups that clean the apostles' house. And now we're getting into another level. So it's a ladder. But you don't start off by cleaning the apostles' house or car. First, you have to be trustworthy enough that you.
So it's seen as doing you a favor if you work hard enough to be allowed to clean an apostle's house, which is also called domestic servitude. I'd like to just point out.
It is. For me, my experience is it's not just about whether you're close or not. Like you could have been close and you still don't get to clean anybody's house if you're not obedient enough or lazy enough. So with me, it's not that I was lazy. I was just always not interested in that sort of thing. So I stayed away. I did it like most people would, but I wasn't taking advantage of as much as others, Right. Where I gave them my time was in preaching. I would go door to door everywhere I went. I would preach to everybody. So they used me in that sense. That's why I said it's case by case. It's really, they're not going to force you to clean if that's not your thing. They'll find something else for you to do.
But they keep everybody pretty busy by the time.
Everybody has to be busy, just in your own lane.
Okay, so is the cleaning and the door-to-door evangelizing expected to happen daily?
The evangelizing at least once per week, cleaning daily, but by different groups.
And what about actual services led by ministers? How many of those are you expected to attend a week?
So let's good point. I almost forgot about that one. So I also, and everyone had to participate in taking the services. So even if you were a member, a regular member, you still had to take a service. So that's different from other places. Other places, only the ordained pastors or ministers or workers are the ones that can do it. Here, even a regular member could lead a service. So I had to do that. See, that's another one of my big things, a special interest. So speaking, so I ended up going door to door and taking services once per week. But that was just me. There were people that might have never took a service, even though they were pressured to. Eventually, they would just let them not do it because that was not their thing, So they would just make them focus on something else. The choir. I was also part of choir. Choir was a little heavier. That one they have to attend practices twice per week, and then depending on the minister, he would make you, like for example, for Sunday, in order for you to participate in the choir and stand up there in your special place, you have to be there at 5 a.m. or the 5 a.m. prayer. If you didn't show up for the 5 a.m. prayer, he wouldn't let you get up during the 10 a.m. prayer when most of the members attended. So you had to earn your spot. And you bought the suit that you were wearing. You had to buy the suit uniforms that were provided by one of the Joaquins. They had a business selling suits and bells. So you had to buy those suits that she chose. That they were super ugly, by the way. Nobody liked them. Yeah, hideous colors. So $200 suits provided by the Joaquin family. And you had to earn your spot to be up there by doing everything that I just mentioned. Businesses left and right.
This
This
is
is what I
wild.
haven't said. They also own
So-
the library in a record. They own a recording company, books.
I was about to say, you mentioned propaganda earlier on, and I was going to ask, like, is there certain reading material that's encouraged that's also printed by the printing company or book company that's
they own a
owned
printing
by
company.
the LLDM?
They have a printing company or deals with a printing company that it's published with their name, Berea. I'm not sure exactly what the politics look like there, but at the end of the day, it looks like it's theirs. It says Berea. They own the rights. They also do television shows. They own their own channel, radio. You can find all this online. Just look Berea Visión, Berea Radio. That's called. Yep. They got everything.
What happens if you don't have enough money to buy one of these suits or uniforms? Like, what happens if you go to a church service and you don't have the suit on?
I mean, depending on this again, case by case, you might have a choir director that is friendly and that might not care that much about not having the original one. So that happens. Sometimes I couldn't afford it, like they wouldn't really mind. But if it's a special color, like you want to have it. So I think that's a little more personal. I think that the abuse is just taking the opportunity, to like sell something. They weren't really forcing anybody to do it. They tried sometimes, but overall, it wasn't. That's not the worst part of that experience,
It kind of reminds me of when I spoke to Roberta Blevins about her experiences with LuLaRoe and how multi-level marketing schemes may often have different targets to hit. And if you reach a certain target, you'll be given like a necklace or a watch or a bracelet, and it will be inscribed with some kind of message that you might see on a plaque in like someone's bedroom or something like that, like live, laugh, love, and things like that. But people would see the watch and be like, oh my goodness, you have that watch, you reached that level. So as you said, it's like people want the suits, people want the uniforms.
I don't think it's that serious, personally. Not in my experience. I do feel like maybe some people were pressured and maybe they saw it that way. But what you spoke about, we do have something like that. You got to think about this particular group. They value money a lot. They did. And they definitely had a lot of multi-level situations going on in business situations. But what they valued the most was not your money. Number one, your loyalty.
Right.
That's one thing that money can buy. So the whole giving you a watch thing, the whole giving you a tie or giving you a perfume or something that Nathan owned, that only happened to a very few people in the organization, and that was because of your loyalty.
So do you feel like that's something your father experienced a lot, being very good friends with him?
Yes, being loyal is the number one thing that will get you rewarded in LLDM. Money comes second. Is money appreciated? Yes, but that's why I'm downplaying money. I'm not saying that that it wasn't a thing. It just wasn't the main thing. All these other crimes and things that were happening, Nathan couldn't come to you and give you $100 or something and get you to do those things. No, it was deeper than that.
Right, as something symbolic that you could wear on your person.
Yeah. No, I'm actually talking about the acts that he would get people to do.
Do you have examples of what that might be?
Yeah, I mean, for the one of the most horrific ones, which is what the reason he's in prison is the girls being abused by him. Like, he got them to do all that by loyalty. They thought that was a badge of honor, like giving him their virginity.
When I was reading some of the headlines around the 2019 arrest, I didn't expect him to look like that, and the pictures of him for the website versus the pictures of him in the orange jumpsuit in the courthouse look extremely different.
Right.
But what I thought about when I was reading those headlines, I just I don't know why I don't know why I expected him to look different to how he actually looks.
So that individual has gone through a lot, in the sense that he was put under a lot of stress the years before he was arrested. He was starting to lose it, as they say. he heard rumors that they were coming for him,
Right.
and that's all he would talk about. So a little bit of it reminds me of the Mormon church.
So the comparisons that I was drawing when I was reading the headlines, it was to the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell cases and the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, because when you first sent me a lot of your information, her trial was very much ongoing at that time. So it reminded me of how for many years the abuse was historical, but it was not reported. And there were a lot of people working to ensure that it remained that way. So it can't just be a one-man operation when there's multiple victims involved going in and out of the home, especially when you've got people working in the home and carrying out the domestic servitude. That there must have been witnesses to what was ongoing, or people that noticed strange comings and goings within the home, or people really close to him that knew exactly what was going on, or even helped to arrange those situations and that abuse. And I think that was a question on my list as well at some point.
So these guys kept everything very tight. It was like, if you I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. There were compartments. Okay, if you were in Nathan or you in Samuel, if you were a choir director, he would only talk to you about the choir business. He will not talk to you about the people that would clean his house.
Right. So the boxes again, the different boxes.
Yeah. So different boxes. So that's why nobody really knew what was happening to these girls unless you were a part of that group. It was like, come in. It's a pretty big house. So yes, there were servants outside. Yes, there were servants in the kitchen. But what were the servants that were doing this specific thing behind in this section of the house? What were they doing? Nobody knows, because you were not allowed in there unless you were doing it. So that's how he got away with that for so long. That's how they got away. Not that there weren't any slip-ups. Like, there definitely had to be, that there were signs here and there. I agree with you. But overall, they tried to keep it in compartments. And that's why there might be people that were washing his cars. There might be people that were bodyguards, etc., that might not have known what happened. But there might be some that do know. It's just case by case. And what I'm trying to say is, it's not like they got that information from him.
Yes.
Like, that would have to be like they saw it themselves, and they're like, but then again, they're also programmed.
Yes.
Don't think about that. Don't think about that. You're thinking he's doing something wrong with those girls up there? No, he would never do that. System for everything.
It's so difficult to think about what people, if you were somebody who had been honored or privileged enough to be invited to clean the leader's home, and you were to witness something that was illegal, abusive, there'd be a very difficult conversation, I imagine, in that individual's mind, because of the thought reform, because of the pressure, because of the increasing amounts of dependency that these high demand groups create around your family and your friends and your community and your livelihood and everything that's involved with that community. So of course there is a moral obligation and a legal obligation to report those crimes, but it's not as black and white or as easy as simple as just phoning the police.
That even the law is made up by humans. So you give it a little check, like on Twitter, you can be certified or not. We look at the U.S. government system. We're like, it's certified. It's legit. It's the one. It's real. It is, because we deem it to be so. Same thing with Nathan's government. It is a form of government. It is real. It is certified. It's all about what you believe. So you might say, from our standpoint, we're like, yeah, they should report because it's legal, etc. Because it's illegal, it's immoral. Yes, but that's our reality. Their reality is that what they believe in and what they're doing is just as legal or more, because they are above the law. Like, the law of the church, the law of Jesus, the law of Christ is above the law of humans. So anything that you can say about anyone having to report, they're not going to do it, because they think they also have to follow the law of LLDM before they follow Mexican or American law. If you were to say anything, it's very important what you're saying. First of all, you got to have a conversation with yourself. If you were an individual that actually gets through with that conversation and you realize I have to do something, and you realize that LLDM law is phony, I don't have to follow this, it's made up, great, amazing. You took the first step. But then what? Like I try to have a conversation with my parents to tell them that I was an LLDM for like a year. I was going back and forth with them, with my grandparents and my parents, and they kept pretending to be okay with me, but it was just a mask,
They just,
it was a front. And behind closed doors, they were looking to see what they would do about me. They were scheming against me. And then eventually they finally cut me off, the shunning part. Then you get shunned, and everybody gets shunned, and then you're out here, you deal with it, you cry, you heal. And then, if you can get through that, then you can actually go to the authorities. And you're going to the authorities of whatever country you're in, the US or Mexico, and you're on your own, because, this is a group that has been around for 100 years. They have people in high places, in the governments and politicians and other shady groups out there that, you fear for your life.
Absolutely.
So,
I didn't even realize that the shunning practice was something that was included in LLDM. So
of course, all these groups do it. Even in the real world, they do it.
Oh gosh. So even if you do have the courage and the bravery and the critical thinking and the cognitive dissonance, and all of those things come together for you to be able to walk into a police station or to be able to phone up law enforcement and say, this is what I've seen, because you're on your own at that point, there's a chance that all may be for nothing anyway.
You got to start over. In 1997, there was a group of people, and I wrote it on my notes. Actually, let's start there. In 1942, there was a division in LLDM. That was the first one, or one of the first ones. At least 250 members left at Luz del Mundo. This happened because there was tensions between a lot of members that didn't like that Aaron Joaquin started celebrating his birthday. And back then, people weren't really allowed to celebrate their birthday, as we would today. I'm sure some sort of celebration was allowed, but like not to the degree that he was doing his own thing. His own thing was receiving gifts and flowers and allowing people to sing him hymns. That's because they do that to this day. They sing hymns to the leader, not to Jesus, not to God, to the leader. And so there was a defection, right? And the church that was created out of that division was called El Buen Pastor, and it's still known in Mexico to this day. The leadership was Jose Maria Gonzalez. They consider him back then a prophet. And I'm sure they still have a prophet to this day. As of 2010, they had 17,000 members in Mexico. Anyway, those people that left were enemies, right? And that happened in 42, and then it happened in 97. There's also rumors that the split in 42 was because of sexual abuse. There's rumors. We will never know because, it's not documented. But 97, it happened again with Samuel, with a different leader, the son. People left because of sexual abuse. And it was reported on the big media, major media in Mexico, but it didn't really go anywhere. The documents all just disappeared. The government swung everything under the carpet, and end of story. So people tried it once, twice, 3 times to do something about it, and they left. And then the people like myself that grew up there were told they're dogs, they're dead to us, they're enemies, so they didn't really get anywhere. It was until now when Nason, in 2014, when Nason got arrested, and people like in my age group and older, younger, it doesn't really matter what age you are, but the people that started, speaking out were all young. We didn't plan this, we had tools that the other people didn't have. So we started posting online after being shunned. After being shunned, we were angry and we wanted to vent somewhere. So we started talking, and then traction, it gained traction. It grew without anyone planning for it to do so. And here we are. But yes, they do shun, and that's how they got these other deserters to be pushed out, and they forgot about it.
There's so much to unpack. In what you've said.
I don't even know where to start.
As you said that people left then it happened again in 97 and people left, and it's happening again now with the leader in prison actually being charged with the crimes of sexual abuse of minors nonetheless, which is truly abhorrent and really despicable when you think of somebody abusing their position of power in that way. And people and the religion hasn't crumbled; it's still going. So this could happen another 4, 5, 6 X amount of times.
Yeah, he could very well. I mean, there's many possibilities. I don't even want to go through them. There's no point. But no matter what happens, their religion, their cult, their organization could continue with the son. His name's Adoraim Joaquin Zamora.
Wow, it would be so interesting as well to know
he's a little younger than me, like a year. Or...
The people that splintered off in these different ages could very well have gone off to start their own religious movements, like we've seen. The
first one did. Out of the second ones, I believe it's case by case. Some people did join other groups. They didn't really start their own. That's the difference between 97 and 42. 42 just became a whole other movement. 97 just people left and started doing their own thing. Didn't start another religion. But yeah, and then this time we still don't know where this is going.
No, but I remember an interview that I did with Kerry Noble around the covenant, the sword, and the arm of the Lord, where they introduced or where the leader started to encourage polygamy within the movement, which is not something that the practice had adopted at that time. And some people were really outspoken about it. And when the leader of the movement was like, well, I have a second wife now, and some people were like, well, we're not interested in this, and so they left. It was the same. They are evil. You're no longer allowed to communicate with the people that have left. The devil has taken that person. They have been led astray. Yeah. And it was believed, and so polygamy became adopted by the movement at that point. And interestingly enough, it was the leader more than anybody that had multiple wives, which he would just decide to take off of his followers, which is a whole other episode that people can go back and listen
Warren
to.
Jeffs also did that, right? I was trying to compare him to
oh my goodness, Warren Jeffs.
Also because he tried to run away also. That's why I assimilate them quite a bit, because that guy also knew he was being followed and he tried to get away.
Well, when you talked about Nassan kind of having a few difficult months before his arrest because
Let's talk about that.
He was paranoid and kind of knew that it was coming. I was thinking about David Koresh. I was thinking about Jim Jones had that mass suicide plan in place.
Yes, that guy
he had the White Knights. He had the practice mass suicide runs that he would, he'd have the drills in the middle of the night. He'd keep people up for 24-hour sermons where he would go on a extremely drug binged preaching session, and he would run these practice mass suicide situations and scenarios, and he was very, very aware of how it would play out if his paranoia ever pushed him over the edge. And then of course with the death of Leo Ryan and his team, that happened, and so the situation on that day, on November 18th in 1978, I think it wasn't a practice run. It was,
So let me tell you what Nason was saying and doing, and this actually recordings of him online. Still, he said a few months before he was arrested, he said, speaking to the church, he said, if I have to run away, hypothetically, if I have to run away and go to another country, because the law is not permitting me to preach, blah blah blah, would you guys still follow me? And everyone's like, he was saying, if I'm a runaway, if I'm a fugitive of the law, would you guys still believe in me? And everyone's like, yes, amen. And then he said, and if I get arrested, and if I was in prison, I would preach and I would baptize people in his name. I mean, he's been there for years now. He got arrested in 2019. It's 2022. There's still no baptisms there. You can't baptize people in prison. But even if he did it, they always find a way around it, because these guys are the ones making the law. So he could just say that he's baptizing them in a spiritual way, that there's no water needed. How many? I want to hear the number. He's been there, since 2019, June. It's February 2022. I want to know how many people has he baptized or how many people has he saved. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that he was ready for it.
Yeah, and he was kind of he was already kind of implementing the reaction that his followers would have through kind of the hypothetical scenarios before he got arrested. And the paranoia in high demand groups, the paranoia in leadership is it's obvious through historical figures and infamous figures that we speak about. You know, Jim Jones took his community over to Guyana. Charles Manson took his community out to Death Valley. There's so many different situations where the leadership have uprooted and moved to somewhere isolated or insular or in the middle of nowhere. So even his first sort of, would you follow me? He's probably thinking outside of American law or Mexican law.
That's why he was building the LLDM cities, probably. Why did he? Because it was not just one in the US, he wanted one in El Salvador. And the president of El Salvador, the young guy, he was friends with the leaders.
It's very, very similar in that case then to Ranch Rajneesh with the Ranch Rajneesh, where they were trying to be given that citizenship and township status.
So I don't particularly think that the president of El Salvador knew what was going on. I'm not saying he's corrupt or a good guy. I don't know the guy, but I know enough that they were friends, that they spoke to each other and treated each other well. So just having the president of a country have a bias towards you, even if he doesn't know what you're doing, but you're the leader of hundreds of thousands of people. That's very dangerous, you know, because like he has a free pass per se. That why was he trying to build a city there and not in Mexico? You know, and he was building another one in the U.S., but again, I think his main focus was like to have one in Central America or, you know, in other places where he could get away, as you were saying. And the reason, you know, you talk about paranoia. The reason he was paranoid was because, see, he took in 2014. I remember when we talked about Samuel, you said, was it automatic? You asked that question. I said, not really. And I said it was a struggle. Well, in 2014, it was also a struggle. Like not everyone accepted Nathan to be the one, because a lot of people that were very, very damaged by Samuel, by that point were already tired. So they didn't want to have another guy come in, you know, and they didn't have the love for Nathan as the apostle for the new guy. The new guy would have to start from scratch, programming you to be loyal to him, because all the loyalty was to Samuel. Only Samuel, not Nathan. So then Nathan comes over and says, well, everything you gave him, now you got to give me. A lot of people were not very happy, even though the doctrine was like flexible and it was very, you believe in the man of God, doesn't matter who it is, sure. But at the end of the day, it was very much about the cult to the person. And you can't take that away. And that's where Nathan messed up. He came in and he tried to take everything away. He said, stop mourning my dad. They let us mourn for like 7 days. It was 7 days of just constant prayer and thinking the world was going to end. And then he got up and said, you know, God spoke to me, I'm the one. And he said, I'm going to give you guys so much time to mourn. And after that, no more mourning. And then after that, he started working. He's very egotistical. So it's all about me and me and me and me. And it got very annoying very quick to a lot of people. So the people that were already thinking of leaving, that wouldn't leave because of their love, parentheses. I mean, you know, what are these called? Quote unquote love, because that's not really love. The love that they have for Samuel, they didn't have that love for Nathan. So he screwed up. And a lot of those people left automatically in 2014. So that there was his struggle. The transition of power was not smooth. He forced it. And then, you know, those people left. They spoke a little bit, but not really publicly. And then a year or two later, that's when people like me started posting things on subreddit. I can speak about my experience. I found this subreddit that was just pretty much abandoned. There was less than 10 people there. I think now they have over almost 3,000. But back then there was less than 10 people. There was not much going on. Nobody was saying anything. And it's interesting because now that I think about it, I had never really been on Reddit. You know, I found it very useful now. It's one of my go-to social networks. But back then it was pretty new to me. Nobody told me about it. I was just surfing the web, and I saw LLDM subreddit. I started posting things there just to vent. Nobody was really posting anything. And then a couple of people started engaging with me. We started posting together, creating a network. And then we found out, later I found out the person that made the group made it, abandoned it, and then came back because that person started seeing, what was going on. We started creating a little conversation. That's my main thing. It's a conversation that is being held there, that we didn't have any other space to do it. And so Nathan grew paranoid because that little conversation grew louder and louder, to the point where he couldn't ignore it anymore, because people from the church were going to read it. And they've had enemies before, but they never had I don't know. I really still don't get to this day why. I feel like he gave us the validation because he started caring about it so much.
Well, that's it. That's what you've just said there. The validation. That's it. He's reading it, and he was reading it. He's reading real life stories of things that have actually happened. So it can be corroborated and it can be proven, and people can apply documentation, paper trails, timestamps, and people can say, oh my goodness, I know where that happened. That happened in Atlanta in this year because I was there. So as soon as you start seeing people make those links, you can't ignore it anymore. So what you said there about validation, that's exactly what happened. He couldn't ignore it because it wasn't just heresy and it wasn't just lies that people were making up. Right. It was truth, and it was people's stories. And there was a bunch of you rallying together to say it. So it's not just one voice lost in the ether. It's all of you together. And he's like, oh my goodness, they are speaking the truth.
Yeah. So that's what we were doing. We were venting, we're healing, helping each other, creating a network. And I feel like, it was a tool. I think a tool is useful in the hands of the user. So it really depends on you, what you're doing with it. I just want to say that. So Nathan, me saying that he was obsessed with the Reddit is not an assumption. It's real. It's actually confirmed by court documents where his assistants told him, my lord, because that's the way they spoke to him. They said, mi señor, my lord, they're saying this and this about you. And he said, oh yeah, ignore it. Don't talk about it. Ignore it. But he was actually invested in it himself, and he was having conversations with people about it, his assistants, and he tried to brush it under the rug, saying don't worry about it. But there came a point where, for example, I had a specific experience where I posted something about child indoctrination, and that post is still up there. I think I gave it to you on my notes. And the next day at 5 a.m., he gets up and he starts talking exactly about what I talked about on subreddit. And he starts saying, he didn't know who I was, but he was just saying, it's not a coincidence at all. And I know LLDM members are going to say, it was the Holy Spirit that was telling him to speak about that. No, he said that because that happened for days.
And you are one of his best friend's sons, and he doesn't know that it's you posting those things. That's pretty wild.
To this day, I've never publicly, the people that did all this, we never took much credit, and we don't want to take credit because, again, it's not us. We don't even know what this is. It's like, I like to tell people that subreddit is a conversation. That's what it is to me. To me, yes, you can have a support group in there, but it depends on you, like what you use this tool for. And I don't really, that's not the movement. The subreddit is not the movement. The movement is the people, that are speaking up. You could not be part of that subreddit at all ever, and still do what we're doing, and there has been people like that. Like, what's important here is having the conversation, networking, and not being silent, right? But anyway, like what actually happened with the subreddit was that he became a little bit obsessed because of this tool, because of these conversations that we were having, and he started just like basically preaching about what we were talking about. Like I said, I was speaking about my experience, but I'm pretty sure that's not the only time that it happens. Like, this guy was literally reading what a bunch of kids on a internet blog were discussing, and he was upset about it. And then later, whenever the actual accusations came up, because the buzz this chat room or conversation or blog created started getting to his ears. So guess what? They didn't just get to him; they got to the victims. And the victims that were around him heard him and heard the assistants talking about it or saying how it was bad, and they started posting, or they started, venting, and connections were made, and here we are. but the victims actually showed up, and the victims showed up, for whatever reason. They might have shown up. They might have, to seek help. They might have shown up just to see who we were, because people are curious. Whatever the reason was, they ended up staying.
Well, yeah, because I just before our conversation today, I went over to the subreddit, and there's like 2,800, almost 3,000 members. So it's when you say there's just some kids on an internet blog, it's more than that. It's pretty significant. 3,000 people is a huge number. It's a huge number, and of course, it's not just those people that showed up and those victims that showed up to share their stories, but people have actually gone to testify in court.
Yeah,
at the court trials.
So out of that, networking, I'll say it in that way. Those relationships, were created. That trust was created, and people. These girls had the courage to go for them to go to the court and say, we want to file this, And this was after years of also investigation by the DA of California, Javier Becerra, and then a bunch of other people. I forget the names out of the top of my head right now, but they worked in this, and from there, other people also came forward, and there's more Jane Does now. I think it's like 6 or 7. There's also males, John Does, I think they call them, 1 or 2, and then people that haven't actually filed anything but are vocal now. And they're like, again, networking. And again, this is bigger than subreddit. I appreciate it. It's a tool, but no matter where you're doing it. And if anybody hears it, I want to understand that it doesn't matter where you do it. Just help, if you can, in any way you can. If you meet a victim, and she doesn't want to post on there, she doesn't want to talk to anybody, that's okay, but if she's talking to you about it, that's already a sign that she's being brave, So just be there for her. And that hit me. I guess memories. So if somebody's sharing this with you that they've never shared with anybody else before, maybe not even their parents, that's some heavy stuff. So just hear them out, and eventually, these people might, and they might get enough determination, courage, whatever it is, to do more. They might go to a tool like that, to like a subreddit, or record a video or a documentary, or even the thing that we think is the most popular, which is go to court. Yeah. So as I was saying, that the point was that this whole situation with the networking happened, and he grew paranoid. So Nathan grew paranoid because he started seeing the gears moving, and they're not used to that. These people having so much control, their whole lives. They don't like having things that they can't manage. So he started speaking to the church differently now. He started saying, if I run away, to another country, if I'm a fugitive, will you still back me up? And then he also asked, if I went to prison, will you still back me up? But this was all because of the fear that he had, because of the subreddit, because of the movement that started growing. That's bigger than any blog. It was people that were actually starting to connect and support each other and going against him. So that's why he was paranoid.
And rightly so, because it wouldn't be too long after that movement start that the police came knocking on his door, and he found himself where he is now. And that is still ongoing. As you said, he was given the highest or largest bail sum in US history.
No, California history. $50 million to start, and then they raised it to $90 million.
Is that because he's a flight risk, do you think?
It's because of that, and because he's such a dangerous man. Like, that you spoke about the White Knights of Jim Jones, right? He also has groups like that, that protect him.
Right. And so it was increased to 90 million, perhaps, when they realized that 50 million was a sum that he could pay.
That's another thing. Yes, he can pay it. So 1, he's a dangerous man. 2, he can pay it, and if he can't pay it, he can get the money from the church. So same thing. And he's a risk when it comes to escaping. Yeah, it's a flight risk. So 3 things, and that's actually in the court documents. Like, it stated, like, those reasons that you just mentioned.
Wow. And just to go back to some of the previous points that we were talking about, because I'm sure we'll touch back on the advocacy and activism of victims and survivors before we finish the episode today. But you mentioned that you were a part of the choir and that often you would speak at services. I'm guessing this was post 10 years old. So this was after your move to Atlanta.
After 10. Yeah, in Atlanta, for the most part. In other cities, I would travel, and then in other cities, they would invite me to actually take services. And that's common. They do it to everyone.
Okay, so just talk us through your life 10 years old onwards, your move to Atlanta, what that looked like, how life changed for you, education-wise, family-wise, relationships, friendships, and then how things just grew more strained for you in those 8 years before you left.
So Atlanta was a great experience because different environment, like I said, that really helped me out a lot. Also, it humbled me because I went from having everything. Like the thing is that because my dad was so close to them, they did take care of him in a sense. I think not as much as they should have, because it's a weird situation there. Like being the leaders, friends with the leaders, but also being a servant. So it's not how people imagine. People would think that we have so many privileges. Like not really, like some, but it just depends on the conversation. So anyway, but I'm still grateful though. I feel like I had everything. And then I went from having what to me was everything, clothes, food, vacations, all those.
Your swimming pool.
And then there was a Walmart, swimming pool. It wasn't like that was my swimming pool was just plastic and $10. So, but I appreciate it. I had a good childhood, and then from there moving to Atlanta, where actually the reason we left was because my dad had a sort of fallout with the Joaquin family. Like they had an argument with his friend, a personal stuff with Nathan, but Nathan really didn't want him to leave, and Samuel also didn't want him to leave. I was actually there when I heard conversations where Samuel told his assistants to tell my dad that he didn't want him to leave. And him telling you something like that is a big deal for them, right? But my dad still felt conflicted enough through all that drama that we still moved to Atlanta. And there I went to elementary school, middle school, high school. I learned English. I made friends. My love for video games grew. In high school, I met his name is Himes, DeMarco Himes. He's a rapper, and I rap with him a lot. He got me into rap. Like I started liking it on my own at some level, and I would just like shake my head, like bang my head to specific artists or music that I liked. And then when I saw him, he was on another level. Like the way that he felt the music was just not like I because of the mentality that I had, I couldn't dance. Me shaking my head, me wanting to be a rapper was not allowed. So even though I had a love for it, I said I can't do that because I want to be a minister. That doesn't go with my image. Doesn't go with my identity. So anyway, he still influenced me anyway. And he still got me rapping. He had a little studio at home, and he would start freestyling and recording things, and it got through to me to the point where now every time I find myself just like head bopping, I think about Himes, and I'm like, he transfer that over to me. I mean, it might have already been in me, but he made me feel like he was okay, right? So those friendships, I feel like really influenced me. I really influenced him too, because there's things where even though he didn't come from a background like mine, he understands a lot of things I was telling you about the world and religion and politics. And he says that he might not have had the change of heart if it wasn't for me. So it was mutual. And that was high school. Traveled a lot after high school. My dad actually kicked me out of the house at 18 because he's a very strict person. And he said he wanted me to learn. He wanted me to learn to take care of myself. So even though that was harsh, and I'm still obviously a little upset about it, I'm grateful because it made me more of an individual, and it made me realize that I didn't need anyone.
That's difficult because in highly religious groups, often people aren't given the opportunity to know how to look after themselves in the secular world. So he's kind of just pushed you out of the family home, and then there you are at 18, like, yeah, okay, let's do this.
And that was not shunning. That was not nothing like that. It was just the shunning came later. That was just him being a tough dad, because he went through a lot of experiences like that. Actually, when he was a young kid like me, at that age, at 18 years old, well, I'm not that anymore. That was 10 years ago. He actually left him and Nathan did that together. They ran away from home, from Guadalajara. They came to Chicago on their own, and they had a hard life because they wanted to be out of that environment. And they don't admit it. Of course, they don't admit it, but they wanted to come and party and do their own thing. And they lived together in a place that they rented in LA, I think, with some friends. And then from LA, they moved to Chicago. And in Chicago, they worked in a restaurant. I think they were waiters or a dishwasher, something like that in Chicago. Nathan, the son of the apostle, he did that. And so there are some things about him that I look back at young him. I'm like, he sounds like he was pretty decent, you know, like he didn't want to be a prince. Part of it, he was conflicted, definitely. Anyway, my dad and him went through that together, and I think my dad was trying to have me have similar experiences to create some character. So again, it's still sad, you know, that my dad is such a rough person, but at the end of the day, I take care of myself fine now, thanks to that questionable decision. I mean, but I was alone for years. I also previously married, and I was, again, it was beneficial. The relationships are beneficial. I appreciate them, but you also need to learn to help yourself before you're able to help anybody else, right? So that's why I say it like that. Not that I want to be alone. Nobody does. I don't.
So through the decisions of your father, you find yourself independent and able to navigate the secular world without LLDM and their practices and their belief system.
You think after 18? No. So at 18, that was just my dad being rough on me. I came back home for a little bit. Then I started traveling from one city to another one with friends, just renting. And then sometimes the pastors would help me. There was a pastor in North Hollywood that would let me stay with him for a couple of months. And that was between like 2010 and 2014. So for like 4 years, I was just all over the place. New York, San Antonio, and then North Hollywood. And then finally, I was in North Hollywood when Samuel finally died. And when he died, I went to Mexico. I stayed in Mexico. I got married there and stayed there until Nathan took over and until he got arrested. And then after he got arrested, because my ex partner is American, we're married, we have a kid. She started applying for my green card. I came over, and then we ended up splitting. She ended up going. She started dating her high school sweetheart, so they're together. They're happy now. And then I was alone for a while. That was obviously another struggle, you know. And then, but we're friends. Like I helped her through that. She helped me, and then I have a partner now. And that, but again, like my dad kicking me out at 18 was not the shunning. The shunning came once I was married. I had a kid. I was 24 years old, and it was during Nathan's time. It was just one day I was sitting in my kitchen, and I came to the realization that I didn't believe in God. So because I didn't believe in God, automatically this whole LDM thing fell off. Like it was very easy for me. I was not questioning Nathan. I was questioning the root. So I knocked the whole bridge in 1 second, and all it took was me telling my ex partner, "Hey, I don't believe." And she said, "Oh my God, like what? Like I haven't believed for a long time." And it's funny that I said, "Oh my God," after saying I don't, but you get it.
So you had one of these snapping moments that people speak of. You snapped away.
It was definitely, yep. It was just a second. The work was a whole year after that. Her and I trying to convince her families to accept us.
Oh my gosh! You're just sitting in the kitchen and you just have this.
Yeah.
What were you thinking of? What do you know if anything triggered it?
I don't know. I've always been a thinker and I've always been questioning things, but that day I just did it. I don't know. It's really weird. I think people look at me like that's strange. I thought that was normal. I don't know. And then after that I started helping people and talking to my friends, and my friends started leaving, my cousins started leaving. We were mutually helping each other, but I was already decided. A lot of my friends that left the organization or the cult, they left and they were still very much believers, you know, in Jesus and Christ and the church, even to a certain degree. A lot of people leave LLDM and they don't believe in Nathan, but they believe in Samuel. So it's like they can't, decide what they are. And I'm not judging. I'm just, it's interesting.
You're having this snapping moment, and then you're speaking to people, and you're almost creating like a little mini revolution within your close circle of friends, having those conversations. Your ex-partner's like, oh my goodness, I haven't believed in years. And what a relief that must have been for her as well, to hear you say, I don't believe in God. And she can be finally like comfortable and open about speaking about her belief system as well.
So that's where it started. And then I started talking to my cousins, my friends, and then we got online. And while I was online on the subreddit and other groups, etc., I was also trying to actively create a bridge with my family to say, can we get along even though I'm not like you? And it got to the point where after months of talking to them, some of them wouldn't even have a conversation with me. My dad has not had a proper conversation with me about this ever. But my mom did. My mom had conversations, my grandfather, my grandmother, and they tried, but it's almost impossible. The programming comes in there and kicks in. And my ex-father-in-law, we sort of agreed for us to leave because it was like,
wow,
it was so toxic. So we moved. We sort of agreed for us to leave. He started getting very threatening, and it was very sad for my ex to see her struggle. With her dad was literally like, "Are you gonna pick him or are you gonna pick us?"
That's not that. The question is, are you gonna pick the religion or are you gonna pick non-religion?
They were shunning at that point. That
it's not a question of choosing your husband or your family. It's the question of, are you going to stay with us and the faith, or are you going to leave the faith? It's not fair to make that ultimatum in any situation.
I get the phone, I call my mom, and I say, okay, her parents are not helping, maybe my parents will help. And I say, Mom, they're doing this. And she said, that's what you get for not believing in the church. God is punishing you. And I said,
oh my goodness.
I said, okay, bye. Hung up, boom. And then I have a aunt across the city who has never been part of any of this, and she let me stay with her for a couple of days. Meanwhile, we got our things together and moved all the way to Puebla, to the other side of the country, because we wanted to get away from everything, right? So, that was the shunning. That's where the shunning began. That's not where it ended. That's where it began, because then after I started getting threats, as I became more vocal, and then at first I was anonymous like everybody else, but once I showed my face, more and more LLDMs kept just coming to that's what we call the members, LLDMs. Just came to my Instagram. And my Instagram's public. Ever since I showed my face, I don't really know 100% if it's the right thing to do, but I just don't want to have to hide, Like, what do you...
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I haven't personally been part of a high demand religious group, but given the content that we are discussing on the show, I've had to make the decision to never say my last name or use my last name anywhere. It was only recently in the last couple of months that I actually started to show my face on my social media accounts. And that's only because I'm going to be appearing at CrimeCon, which is going to be extremely public. So I wanted that decision to show my face to be my decision that I made when I was comfortable. And the reason I've done that is because I want to protect my family and friends from brigading, which is what you have just explained has been happening on your Instagram account, where believers or people that follow the LDM faith will come to your Instagram account and just and it happens on my YouTube videos, on my Instagram account. There'll be brigaders of a particular faith-based group or a high demand group that just come to one post or one video and just slam it with all of their beliefs. And they are the comments and some of the interactions are so horrific that other people outside of that will see these comments and then say things like, and you're telling me that this isn't a cult, which I find really interesting, that's an outsider's perspective when that happens. So the fact that you have decided to put your face out there speaks to that bravery that we were discussing earlier. It couldn't have been an easy decision to do that. And even to this day, you're still kind of putting yourself out there, and your artistry that you create it compensates that, I think, and complements the work that you're doing when you're able to put a face to the person's name, when, you know, we can go and listen to some of the music that you've released that I'm really excited to talk about. I think it adds to the authenticity of you as a speaker.
Yeah, I don't even think it's personally. I know why people think it's bravery, and that's the first thing, you know, that comes to mind. But for me, it's like, whether it's brave or not, because I could still be scared, right? I'm not saying you should be, but the point is that you have to move on. You have to move on, and then the way that people think, it's like, once they know who you are, once they see your face, once they see your eyes, your mouth, like your expressions, it creates another level of a connection. Yes. So that's why I feel like that's why I did. I never really understood it, why I did it. You know, I wasn't trying to be brave or anything. I was just trying to move on, and I was trying to connect with people, and that is the reason that I share my art with others, because I ask myself, when it comes to fame and all of those things, I look at the rappers, I look at the musicians, and I think us as a society worshiping them so much is toxic. I don't like it, and it's a little bit of a situation there, you know, in my head, because I'm like, so why are you sharing your things with others? You know, if you don't care for others, then why are you doing it? And so it's a conflict, you know. It's like, do I care about others listening to my stuff, or do I not? And I just gotta have a purpose of why I do it. Number one, I do it for myself. I do it because that's how I vent, and that's how I have healed. And two, I did it to connect it with others. So I just want people to, you know, it could be one person, and actually there was one specific person, and actually there's more than one, but there's one that comes to mind right now. And she went through a lot. Like, she was a victim of abuse by Samuel. And one day I was talking to her about something else, and my music came up. My music's not that good. My lyrics are not that good. But she told me that she cried when she heard my stuff, and that she connected with me, and not cried in like in a negative way, but in like, because she connected to me, you know, to the things that I was saying. So it's like, I cried when I made that stuff, and it helped me heal. So her being someone that doesn't speak to this about anybody, is like she was, I think the way I see it is like she was having a conversation with my music about things that she doesn't want to discuss with anybody. So that's helping her heal. And I'm like, what? Like, my stuff is not good. Like, how can it be, you know, help to anybody? But that's
that
the way
is not true. That is not true. And we'll play some of it in this episode so people can understand that what you're saying there is not true. That's not a fair opinion at all.
But my point is that the purpose is what matters to me, because I'm very critical about myself and about all of this. And I know that I'm not the you know, the best person to do anything that I've ever. I do appreciate myself. I am proud of myself. That's not. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, I like keeping my feet on the ground. And I also, when I talk about the movement, I'm like, there's so many wishes that I have and hopes about the movement and where I want this to go. Right. And that's just my personal opinion. And I wish we could do more. I wish we could, you know, reach more people, because there were thousands of girls that were abused, thousands, not just the 4 that are in court or the 5. This has been going on for 100 years. So then I tell people, like, think about it. Why are these girls not coming forward? And I know why. I tell people, because one girl was told bring another girl. So therefore they feel like they're guilty. They feel like they did something wrong too. They compromised them. So it's a little chain. And my point is that I'm trying to help them. I'm just trying to find a way to heal and to connect with others and pull them in and say, let's have a conversation. And if you look at music out there's not a lot of people that talk about you know, this conversation that we're having. So I felt the need. Like I listened to a specific rapper that made he's very known. His name doesn't matter. What matters is that he was praised for writing a song about a car accident. And yes, that's amazing. That's cool. I appreciate the art. I appreciate the poetry. But it's important to him. Like, surviving a car accident is very important. It just affected him, and that's the way he healed. That's the way that he felt like that had significance to him. You know, he made something negative into something positive. That's my point. And what I'm doing is the same thing. You know, I'm not saying I'm better or worse. I'm just saying I feel like more people should do it, though. I feel like more people should turn all this negative stuff, all the situations, and do something, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think what you said there is quite beautiful, really. You're looking at what you're trying to achieve and the aims that you have for the material that you release. And you have had that discussion with yourself on, well, do I want to be rich and famous from what I release? No, I don't think I do, but what I'm doing helps to heal me. And then from the work that you're doing, you're validating other people's experiences and allowing them to know that they're not on their own and that they are understood and that somebody sees them and that somebody else has experienced what they've experienced. And I always talk about different art forms and how they can help people heal and how they can help people explore what they've been through. And the fact that you are able to do that for other people is such a huge and significant thing. And just before we hit the record button, we talked about how it's not always been easy to talk about these things. It's not always been easy to receive the testimonies and experiences from survivors and other people who have experienced abuse at the hands of the LLDM movement, but that you're able to recognize that it's not easy, but also that being in the middle of the advocacy and activism work is a huge responsibility. So we were talking about how difficult that must be to actually tread the line between offering support to people, but protecting your own mental health and trying to nurture your own positive well-being at the same time as making sure that those people that have experienced these things feel validated and seen. And so it's been a difficult journey for you in the activism space, learning how to juggle those two things and navigate through them. But from the way that you've spoken, in how reflective you are, how you've always questioned things, that speaks to your critical thinking and the way that you are so in tune with other people's experiences and how deeply their testimonies affect you shows that you have such high levels of empathy. So I think you're the perfect person to be creating this artwork to speak to other people and such a great person to be at the center of this advocacy work. And it is difficult and you recognize that at times, but you've been on such a journey from just kind of your first 10 years and then on to 18 and then moving out of home and then moving back home and then getting married and then realizing that you might be atheist or you might not believe in God, but what does that mean for your belief system and trying to figure all of that out. And then
that's beautiful. That's an opportunity. Like I love not knowing.
It's and for some people that's terrifying. To just sit at the table and have that revelation.
That's the best thing. Like not knowing, like knowing that everything in the world was just made up by others, and that it's not about right or wrong. It's like it's not the thing. It's not, how do I say? It's not defined.
Wow.
That's amazing to me. And it's just so sad that like, and I was talking to somebody about that yesterday. And it's also sad that we take everything for granted, like all these laws, all these governments, and everyone's like, what are you going to do? And I told them, just talk about it. Again, to me, the main thing is having a conversation, and that pisses me off that people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Why can't we just talk about it? So somebody told me, you want to cause a revolution. And I'm like, no. I'm like, maybe it's necessary, but at first, I don't want to cause an arms revolution, a war. No. I mean, if it happens, it happens. But I'm talking about something other. I'm talking about a revolution here. Like we all need to start just like the way that school systems are set up. We all know it's messed up. Yeah. In every country, in every state, everyone says, "Oh, Texas is better, California is worse," or vice versa, or England or Mexico. Like no. Like I have such high expectations for humanity and hope. That's like, why do we act like we can't make things better? And so what you said is like, to me, it's beautiful, like to not know, like not knowing if God is real, not knowing if we're alone in the universe, not knowing about, like, it's cool because we can start. Like me, I was given a new opportunity, like me leaving that place where I was told it's all done. I realized, no, it's not all done. It's all made up. That's the view that I have out here. It's all made up. The whole world, we can change all of this. But are people willing to have this conversation? And the people that don't want to have this conversation, it's for a reason, because they're like the Joaquines, because they're the ministers, because they're the people that are benefiting from the current situation. I'm not happy with the way the world is. Like we talked about it a few minutes ago. Like they're about somebody's waiting to press a button just to, and I'm not paranoid about the bomb either because I'm not afraid of death.
Yeah, I think when it comes to those conversations, I spoke about this to my partner yesterday. First of all, I just want to comment on how you have such a profound and progressive way of thinking that I wish that more people in the world could view things the way that you do, because I feel like there would be a lot more impactful conversations happening rather than non-conversations happening, where people want to discuss things but they don't for whichever reason or another. So I feel like if we all adopted a little bit of Dario in our lives, there could be some really interesting conversations and exchanges happening. But one of the things that's been spoken about in our house in the last week or so with the situation with Russia and the Ukraine is that we're so far removed from that right now that it's easy for us to kind of just say, oh, that'll blow over in a week. But one day that's not going to be the case. One day it's not going to blow over, and it's going to be in our backyards, and it's going to be in everyone's backyards. And as soon as somebody that is so power hungry and narcissistic and powerful in that sense is going to just hit that button one day, and the world will never recover from nuclear fallout. And that is absolutely terrifying. And so we should do what you mentioned earlier. We should be questioning those people, those singular people that have such significant power over so many people. Who gives them the right, and what kind of detrimental, irreversible effects could they have on humanity, whether it's 100 people, 1,000, or the entire globe?
Exactly.
What irreversible effects could those people in those positions have, and who are they accountable to? Because it doesn't seem like they are accountable to anybody. I know that we spoke about Nassim being in prison at the moment, but those charges might not stick for one reason or another. And even if they do, the church hasn't collapsed. There's still LLDM followers are still seeing that person who is incarcerated as the figurehead of this movement. So it's tough, and there's so many different things in this episode that we've discussed today through your very different way of viewing and perceiving things that we could talk about for days, for weeks, that I'm sure you've had lengthy discussions about on the different spaces that you work in terms of collecting testimonies and providing spaces for people to speak about their experiences. But before we finish today, I have a few questions. I know that I have asked you if you'd be comfortable with sharing any of your material with us. You've spoken in this episode about how you were introduced by Himes to rap music and how that spoke to you, and how he really felt the music more than you'd ever realized was possible, and then you realized that you could do the same. And I have been watching your social media accounts for a couple of years now, and I've been able to see some of the profound things that you've posted on there. Snippets from some of the music that you've released. Sometimes it's just the lyrics, sometimes it's clips, and we get to hear some of it. So I wondered if you'd be comfortable sharing some of that with the listeners today.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about which one I would recite.
I can't beatbox either, so there's nothing.
No,
there's no background.
I rather do a cappella. There's more freedom there. Let me see. So I sent you the lyrics. First of all, if I was to curse, would you bleep that out?
No, I always say to people, however you want to tell your story is your story. The content and the themes included in the episodes are always of adult nature anyway, because we speak a lot about different forms of abuse. So true. If the cursing comes, the cursing is probably the lesser of the shocking themes of the episode. So however you want to share your story, it's completely up to you. So cursing is probably encouraged.
Okay, so this is one of the very first verses that I wrote. I put out to me there's mixtapes, because again, even though I love doing this, I don't think it's a big deal. So it's not like I'm doing albums or EPs or anything like that. There's mixtapes to me. So I've done 3 alone, and then I've done 3 with my friend Cecil, who also left the cult. He's from Atlanta. He's a great guy. I grew up with him, and he's a much better rapper than I am. Himes also. So I love to work with him. His hooks are amazing. If anybody wants to hear them, we'll leave links for that. But yeah, don't judge me too much. For me, just look at the motive. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. But Cecil and Himes, oh, those guys are talented, and I'm sure they're gonna get far. Yeah, so I have a verse that I prepared. It was from my first mixtape, and I called it "Living Through Hell While I'm Dying for Heaven." Living for hell, dying for heaven. So it goes something like this. I just read my script. I will make it to a sequel. So before I hit the crypt, bet I'll knock it through cathedrals. In a head stack, I'm a needle. Young Bart, no beetle. I recognize the deceitful when I hear the devil fiddle. I made this for the people. I'm Jesus to these cripples. Fuck the follows, no disciples. We're divine as such, we're equals. Recycle all these Bibles. With the paper, useless idols. Dig deep within yourself to find a real role model. A message in a bottle. This the new gospel. Apostle Aristotle resuscitating these possums, exposing all the scribes, selling out for simple bribes, losing sight like damaged eyes, so don't always mind the guide. Stay alive like fuck a suicide. I'll never say goodbye, though I marry samurai. They told me live pious. Sure, who's biased? European or the Mayan? Who holds my alliance? Turning down all these messiahs, never heard of some Itzama. First of all, fuck all these gods. Who applauds for a fraud? I don't keep up with facades. If the less is truly more, get the homeless living large. Throw me a cardboard box. Sanctity is in a payload, yet they preach and then collect, no. Pay attention to the order. A transaction if you ponder. If you don't, then you're a sponsor to these wicked ill imposters. All they eat is duck and lobster. Look how much they fucking cost us. Now I'm wilding out, breaking chains, flipping tables, see the chains. Jesus Christ, must they crucify her? For having boss to testify because she's so fucking tired? For having boss to testify against this fucking liar? Oh, I'm living a hell of a life and I'm dying to get to heaven. Lucifer fell from the sky, floor 7. Hey, Mr. Reverend, why are you driving a Bentley? But preach by repentance and a generous rhetoric. What sounds so irreverent? Stay low like the nether. Who can judge transgressors? Who am I to measure? Throw stones if you never, ever, ever pleased your pleasures wherever, whenever. Forever is a long time to spend together, so I'm out the gates. Thank God I'm an atheist. In the circle of life, I'm outside the radius. Yeah, Dr. Sir, I'm quite all right in the cranium. We're not of this world, so what that make us, aliens? Then that's craziness. Fuck your laziness. I'd rather do the work and find a guy who they say he is. Not miscellaneous shit. I must admit, I'm something like Kimmy Schmidt, clueless as fuck. I didn't know the difference between loving and fucking. Our knowledge is nothing. Scientists bluffing. Clergy blood sucking. So it's harder to trust in.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Sorry about my accent.
Please don't apologize. That was perfect. Oh my goodness. There's so many parts of that were your plays on words are absolutely incredible, considering that English is your second language.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That was incredible. I will post the lyrics as well in the episode description because I know you've sent a segment of the verse over and a lot of different links to different resources as well. But that was amazing. Thank you so much, Dario, for doing that for us today.
Thank you for putting up with me.
So before we finish today, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of where they could see some of the advocacy and activism work that we've spoken about. I don't know if you can mention the interview that you've got later this week, or if that's something that's more under wraps for now.
So I would just say that I've been working with a professional studio, and they got a deal with a major streaming network. And they're going to be finishing with filming that pretty soon. So yeah, that's something. It's not the only one. There's about 6 or 7 that are actually in the works. So this whole situation is about to get exposed, and that's amazing because my friends and I, we used to joke about one day insert your favorite streaming network. One day seeing our story there in your favorite streaming network, and it's happening, on other, streaming networks. So it's amazing because I feel like we're not done, but I just hope that what we've done sort of helps other people make a change in their community. Because I feel like if my friends and I, and not knowing what we were doing, we were able to influence 300,000 people without really meaning to. We don't know. To this day, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think they know what they're doing, but they're trying. That's what matters. I feel like you could do that in other countries. You could do that in other organizations. So I just want people to. I know it's hard to believe in yourself, but just try. Just try to do something. Like just do it for yourself first. Try to network with others. So start a community, start a conversation, then network, and then see where that goes. I mean, that's how everything started. I don't think the people that took down XXX, X and Y cult leader really thought that, that they were doing anything. Sometimes it was the government, sometimes it was regular people. Sometimes it was too late, like Jim Jones. But what I really, regarding Jim Jones, what I really admire was that in the recordings, you hear that lady that is saying, "But why? Why do we have to do this? Can we leave the kids alone?" She started a conversation. Too late. Maybe too late, maybe too little. But if more people would have thought like her, that wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I want to tell people. Like, we're here, so just go ahead and try to start a conversation like that lady did. I don't remember her name, but maybe you do it right in time. Just try.
That's just simple advice. Just start a conversation. Just see where it goes, and who knows where it will go, because as you said, the person that created that original space on Reddit created it and there was nothing kind of happening with it. So they walked away, and then they came back and they were like, oh, there's people here that are ready to have a discussion. So yes, even if it's not, because we live in a world of instant gratification, and instant gratification means that everything happens now, right now, immediately. But even if it's something that doesn't happen immediately within days or weeks or months or years, it doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. That one conversation that you have with somebody at some point may plant those seeds that kind of grow and sprout, and a few years later blossom into a profound snapping moment at the kitchen table one day out of nowhere, where you decide that the high demand group that you're in is not actually what you believe in, and so you're going to go and create a life for yourself outside of that movement, even if it means your friends and family cut you off forever in the shunning processes that we speak about on the show sometime. I think that's great. And it's not just the insert your favorite streaming service stuff that's coming out. There's also other stuff. So we've mentioned the subreddit, which has over 2,800 members, which is r/xlldm. So that's EXLLDM. For people who want to head over, even if you just want to go and read some survivor testimonies. A lot of stuff in there is also posted in Spanish, so it's and a lot is also in English. So there's a mix for different communities and cultures and ethnicities to get involved in that space, to read some stories and to see what's going on over there. But Dario, you're also the moderator of another subreddit, which I think is quite prevalent to other survivors that haven't been in LLDM, but may have been in other movements who might be listening today.
Yeah, so that one is r/cult survivors. They actually, the people that moderate that one were nice enough to allow me to help them out. And that I don't really feel like I've been that important. I don't feel important anyway, but I feel like I haven't done enough yet. That feels to me like the next step, I put, the first thing I did in there was put an intro, put who I was. And then I gained a lot of attention because if you actually, I don't care about likes or upvotes or any of that, but the fact is that is the highest upvote ever on that subreddit. My introduction to who I was as a moderator, and I said, hey guys, this is where I come from. This is what we did over in that other subreddit. I'm here now, and I put my story there. A lot of the things that I've shared here, and people say, how can we help? Jose, how can we help? And I was like, I don't know. I've been thinking about that for a while. Like, I wish we could all get together and do something about this. The point is that that's another place where people support each other, where you can vent, where you can communicate with people that have gone through things like this. And I think we all have, people just put us all in that box, the cult box. But there's, I think it's more about indoctrination to me. Like if we all, started thinking about that, we're all very indoctrinated. So it's a place for people to go and talk about that and deal with it. It's a great place. So if people want to check that out too, that would be a great place. For people that don't relate to LLDM or LLDM as the movement, they can also visit that one if they need any type of help. There's always going to be somebody, that wants to hear you.
There's been a few things that you have said during this interview that I would just like to also challenge you on. And one of those things is you said, my rapping's not that good, or my verses aren't that great, or I don't think that I'm that important. And I would I'd like to challenge that point, because I think that you just being here today, despite all of the other work you've done, is contrary to those things that you've said. So even if I can offer you a tiny little bit of validation today, in what you have done by coming to chat with me, and how you may be inspiring other people to come forward, inspiring other people to take up their personal art form that helps them to heal, that helps them to explore their emotions and their experiences. The history that you've given us on LLDM that people might not be aware of, if they're approached by somebody on the street and they can say, oh my goodness, I know about this group because Dario spoke about them. There's so many things that we could draw on that you've spoken about in this episode. And I don't think it's fair for you to see yourself in the light that you have occasionally in this episode. And I know that might be a symptom of the high demand religious group that you grew up in, or the experiences that you had with leadership or your family, or maybe even since you've left. But I just wanted to say that I don't agree with those things that you've said about yourself, and that I am here to say that I think that you are incredible in the activism work that you've done. I've seen how empathetic you are in your Reddit posts and your discussions. The reason that original Cult Survivors post where you introduced yourself got so much traction is because a lot of moderators on Reddit don't even think to introduce themselves. Nobody knows who these random usernames are behind the screen. Nobody knows where they came from or their experiences. And the fact that you even had the forethought to say, hey, this is who I am. This was the group that I was a part of. This was some of the systematic abuse and thought reform that was in place, and this is, so these are some of the headlines and news articles of what's currently going on in the group I was in. A lot of people don't think to do that, and that in itself gives you credibility as a person who is standing up for other people who are just coming out to share their stories. And what you've said about sitting and listening to people and just letting them tell you about their experiences, even if they're too nervous or shy or anxious or worried about speaking further than just you at that moment, the catharsism that might come from them having that experience, as you said, may encourage them to go further. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you, and I think you're fabulous, and I think you're fantastic. As I said, I've been following your work for a couple of years, and we finally today got the chance to sit down and have our conversation. So before we sign off today and finish, I just wondered if there was any advice or any last comments of things you think we've missed that you would like to add today.
For advice, it's a little complicated because everyone is in a different situation. So I just want to be careful about that. And I want to say that anything that I might communicate, it's not for everyone, right? Like, be thoughtful of what you do regarding cults and how you handle your exit. There's no generic 1, 2, 3 step guide, but in general, just learn as much as possible, I would say, so that you're able to make a better decision. Learn about what other people have done in other cults and how they reacted to it, how they left, etc. But if it's a possibility to you, I would say number one, leave as soon as possible. Again, if that's what seems like the best thing for you, leave as soon as possible, because I mean, we only have one life, and I know that sounds so cheesy and everyone says that, but you can't afford to give these people your time. That's one of the things that they steal from you. So don't give them your time. Leave as soon as possible. Number two, I would say continue to learn before leaving, while you leave, and after leaving. Learn as much as possible about whatever you're interested in. If you want to learn about cults because you want to learn about your situation and how it affected you, then I mean, there's so many documentaries out there. I don't want to recommend a specific one. It's everywhere, on YouTube, on streaming networks, on Spotify. There's so many good podcasts that I would listen to. You just type cult, and you'll see something. Once you're doing that, what might help you heal and start getting out of that mentality that what happened to you was unique, and just so you can relate to other people, look for patterns. They'll make you, feel like, oh wow, I'm not the only one going through this. It might be a good starter, a conversation starter. When you meet somebody that was part of a different group, or even that isn't a cult and they don't even know that they're in it. So number four, I would say just find a way to vent or heal, kind of like what I did with my poetry. So whether it's a hobby or an art, or you want to go to therapy, just find whatever works for you and get better. I mean, because it's really not, they make you think that that's going to last forever, and that you're going to be hurt forever, that you're going to be punished forever. And that's not true. Everyone's healing process is different. I can't tell you that it's going to be quick. I can't tell you that it's going to be long, but just get it started. That's all the advice that I have. And like I said, just be mindful that we're all different.
It's like you've said throughout the episode, it's a case-to-case situation. It's not the same for everybody, which I think is really important, because a lot of the time cult survivors are clumped together, as you've also said in this episode, but also LLDM members might just be seen as LLDM members, even though there's the difference even between your mother and father in how he was brought into the church, how she was brought into the church, the situation for you and your siblings, and how you're no longer a member of the church. So what's really important to remember in what you've said there is individualism, which is not encouraged in high demand religious groups most of the time. Exploring that individualism and understanding it. And what you said there about creativity and finding a way to vent is something that I've often been advocating for on this show, in terms of coming to chat on a podcast, or keeping a private diary, or starting a YouTube channel, or starting a blog, even if you don't publish it live, even if you just have it as something that's your own, that nobody ever has to see, just as a way for you to get it out there into the world. If that means, as you said, going to see a therapist, as that means going to sit down with your husband or wife or brother or sister or close friend or even work colleague, and just saying, I had all of these experiences and I really just need to get them out there in the world, so that they are spoken, so that, I can start to process those things. Because as words leave our mouth, we do start to think about them in a different way, and the cognitive reaction is different from having that internal conversation with yourself and voicing those things out loud. And we see it on the show all the time. And I often say before we hit the record button, don't worry if we go off topic, if we go off on a tangent, if you start to talk about something that's not on the question list, because often the parts where people say, oh my goodness, I've just remembered this, or, oh, and another thing I didn't mention, and people start to just, their stream of consciousness as they talk is often the most authentic parts of those stories. And you've given us a few of those moments this evening that I think will really speak to people. And if there are fellow survivors of high demand groups that are listening today, I think they'll also be able to see what an incredible person you are, and just thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for being a person who is willing to listen to those stories, who is willing to be patient for people, who is willing to view things in a way that is perhaps not conventional, but also encouraging. And thank you for giving up your free time to do things like moderate pages where people come to talk about their experiences in safe environments where they won't be judged. A moderator's job is not easy, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. When there's difficult discussions happening in the comments, or people post delicate subject matter, the moderators have a difficult decision on whether that material stays up, or whether there needs to be some type of restrictions around the comment section, and of course you're having to delete things and block people, and you're going to get brigaders coming to those pages, and it's your responsibility to protect people in those online spaces so that they feel comfortable talking, and that's not an easy thing to do. So thank you so much for also being a person that allows those places to remain safe and allows those discussions to happen, and for people to perhaps come forward and say, do you know what? I actually did have one of these experiences, and I've never spoken about it to anybody before, but I've seen other people talk about their experiences and they have been supported. And so I feel safe enough to tell you mine. And just for sharing your art with us, because you could have recorded these things and decided that you were never going to share them with anybody. And we've been lucky enough to just hear a sample in today's episode, and you can actually hear more of Dario's work online. So would you like to tell everybody where they can find more of your material?
So you'll find it if you go to my Instagram. That's at Mr. Speak Your Mind. Mr. Speak Your Mind. You will find on my bio a link that will connect you to all the streaming platforms, and that's the easiest way to find everything.
And that's great. And occasionally on your Instagram page, you do share little snippets with people, different lyrics and passages from different parts of your poetry and your rapping. So even if people just follow the Instagram account, they will be able to kind of keep up to date with some of the thoughts that you're having occasionally, which is great. So I guess all there is left for me to say, Dario, is just thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming here and speaking out about your experiences, but also about how people can be conversing and seeing things differently. And again, thank you for your advocacy work that you have been doing on online spaces. And I really hope that we carry on seeing more and more of your work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Like I said, this is the first time that I ever do anything like this. I don't know if I'll ever do it again besides the other appointment that I have. But I do hope that other people do it. Every time that I see somebody do something like this, it makes me, really proud of them, because it's really not easy. I really appreciate I'm not a moderator on the LLDM subreddit, but like you said, that job is very hard. That job is very hard because you have to establish what is going on in that subreddit, like what type of community is it. I like to view it as a conversation, but other people like to view it as different things, right? So thanks to them, everything that has happened wouldn't be possible without the person that made it, without the people that moderated, the people that comment. So I really appreciate them. I really appreciate the people over at Cult Survivors, and if it wasn't for all those kind of people, there would be silence. There wouldn't be any conversations. And for people like you, I'm really grateful for people like you for continuing, to expose all these things. I don't know your reason. I was wondering about it. I don't know if you want to share that off the record or if you want to say it in here.
Yeah,
but I'm very interested as to why. But I'm grateful because it's just, no matter the channel, things need to be shared.
It's usually before we hit record, I always ask if anybody has any questions before we start recording, and that's usually, if there is a question, it's always, so how did you get into this? So it's a bit of a convoluted story, really. So I'll send you a nice long email after we finish today. But what you said about people just coming forward to share their stories, and whether or not you'll do this again. I hope you do, because if you listen back, which not everybody decides to do, I think you'll realize that this conversation has been factual, historical, but also full of personal stories. So you've given us a very good overview of the church's history, but also the effects that it's had on you personally as an individual. And I think that is such a great combination, and all that we can really hope and ask for in these episodes. So thank you so much again. And I really hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, Dario.
You too. Thank you for everything.
Take care. We'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night. Take care.
That is the end of this week's episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.